Game of Thrones: The Prideful One. In the end I had to stay another month in the Iron Islands before leaving to Winterfell. I had to ensure all the Iron Islands started fishing and collecting pears, as I commissioned alcohol factories to the islands. After everything was ready, with the factories being designed and the Ironborn fishing, I took off with some of my men to Winterfell. I left the majority of my men behind to ensure they fixed some stuff in the castle. As I sailed, I couldn't help but wonder if I should take Pike as my main seat, or keep it on Bear Island. "We'll be in Winterfell in a fortnight, my lord," one of the Ironborn said, as we took off. "Perfect," I nodded as I went to my cabin to sleep, something I haven't done properly in a while. Catelyn Stark POV. Ned refused to break the betrothal. Why couldn't he see what I saw? Ronard Mormont was reckless, and didn't think things through. He might have won the war against the Iron Islands, but what if he starts another war brings our end? "Ned, I beg you, please, consider this," I pleaded. "Cat, I know what you feel, but I gave my word. He did what he did to protect Sansa, and I think Sansa loves him. I can't break her heart," Ned said, standing his ground. "Theon is the rightful heir of the Iron Islands. He won't stand by and let him take it," I said as I took my leave. "He can't take anything without men," Ned muttered as he sighed. Sansa Stark POV. Ronard had won. It's been months since I last saw him, and I can't help but feel happy he won, that he is safe, that he is coming back to me. Maybe I am in love? I don't know. But the thought of him dying was painful. I prayed to the gods he would survive. I prayed for his victory. I miss our dates, the way he laughs, how carefree he is, how charming his smile is. I miss kissing him. I simply miss him. 2 weeks later, Ronard Mormont POV. I was finally seeing the gates of Winterfell from afar. 2 weeks of sea and months of fight and war were really taxing, but I had won, and that's all it mattered. I was now the High Lord of the Iron Islands and the Bear Island, that was loyal to House Stark. Though I knew many lords in the north would fear this new political power I had acquired, and would want to marry me to the north, to ensure my loyalty. If Lord Stark broke my betrothal, it would be a political suicide. I was the biggest taxable income in the north, and now I was a military threat. But even if he didn't care about that, his honor would bound him to keep my betrothal, because I had kept my word. I had made Sansa as happy as I could, and I had protected her. "We are here, my lord," one of my newly acquired men said, snapping me out of my reverie. Inside I was greeted by Lord Stark and his children once again. Sansa this time was smiling at me, as if eager to run out of her family formation and hug me. That was new. "Lord Stark," I greeted, but unlike last time I was here, I didn't bow to him. "Lord Mormont." Lord Stark offered me a handshake. "My lady," I approached Sansa, kissing her hand. "My lord, I prayed to the gods you would come back to me," Sansa said with a sweet smile, raising an army of red flags. Perhaps it was a bad idea to make everyone believe I started the war for her. I didn't expect her to fall for me this fast. "Then your prayers have been answered," I smiled back, putting a mental note to deal with this later. "Lady Stark," I greeted, and if eyes could kill, she would have my head on a spear. "Lord Mormont," Catelyn Stark practically hissed. I eyed her carefully for a minute, wondering what the hell was her problem, but I stopped my quest for an answer when I realized I don't care. "Rob, good to see you," I smiled, noticing he had conflicting feelings about me. For one, he was happy, and at the same time mad I took what was supposed to belong to his friend Theon. "I'm glad you came back," Rob said with a serious look. "May we speak in private, Lord Mormont?" Lord Stark requested. "As you wish," I nodded, following him to his solar. Inside of his solar, Lord Stark sighed as he served 2 cups of rum and sighed. "Do you have any idea how many problems you caused?" Ned Stark rubbing his temples. "I do, but I assure you, the list of problems I took care of is infinitely bigger than the one I generated." I nodded. "My wife wants to break the betrothal," Ned Stark admitted. "I got that vibe when she stabbed me with her eyes. Quite a dangerous glare she has," I chuckled. To my surprise, this made Ned Stark laugh. She can do that." "I did what had to be done. They were a disease spreading and destroying everything in their way," I said with a cold tone. "I had taken control over the disease, and I will cure it. No more old way." Ned Stark eyed me curiously before he sighed. "Perhaps it was for the best." "It was," I nodded. "Without the Ironborn doing what they used to do, I would ensure a safer north as a whole, and I would also erase a threat in the map." Theon Greyjoy POV. The man that destroyed my life was here. The man that took everything from me was here. This was my chance. He would die. He would pay the iron price. I would make sure of it. I would avenge my father and sister, and all my fallen brothers. I would claim his head, and the Salt Throne, as it was my right. "Theon, think this through," Rob said with a worried look. "He will die by my sword, Rob, one way or another, but he will die today." I growled as I put on my armor, and got ready to challenge the bastard to a duel. Unbeknownst to them, a raven was carefully listening to their conversation and flew to warn his master. HIGHIQ bitches. Chapter 22. Chapter 21. It seemed that for now my betrothal was safe, but now I had to deal with a girl in love. I wasn't so sure how to deal with the conundrum. While she looked like a woman, she was a girl in what mattered for me. But I suppose everything ended the way it was meant to be. "John, how have you been?" I inquired. Right now, John was working on the stables, cleaning the horses and brushing their manes. "I've been good, Lord Mormont," John smiled, trying to be polite. For him I was a lord, and he was a bastard. Social stigmas in this world are quite troublesome. "Just call me Ronard or Ron," I offered, cutting him off when I saw he was about to refuse. "Consider that my one lordy order for you, shall we?" I suppose, John smiled. Where are you, bastard? Theon Greyjoy shouted, his tone full of anger and hate, that much I could tell. I suppose that's for me, I'll leave you to your work, and by the way, should you ever need employment, be sure to reach me out. I smiled as I started to walk out of the stable. It seemed Theon had exploded earlier than I anticipated. Don't hide, Theon shouted, and many people started to gather close to him to see the show he was putting. I'm gonna take a wild guess and say you are looking for me. I chuckled walking towards him. I will kill you, Theon growled with a sword in hand. Or disappoint me, go ahead, flip that coin, I taunted him. Theon rushed towards me, sword in hand, and started to hack his blade wildly, as I dodged his attacks with my hands on my back, purposely mocking him. Stop running, Theon growled, angry at not being able to hit me. Stand and fight like a man. That's not how fighting works, you attack I dodge, simple. I laughed, as I dodged another incoming attack, ducking under his swing. Ah! Theon started to shout, losing all coordination, swinging his blade like a child throwing a tantrum. You are more likely to hit yourself than me if you keep going like that. I smirked at him, which made him shout even louder. Theon, stop this madness. Lord Stark arrived shouting angrily. Don't worry, Lord Stark, it's not like he can do much, just let the toddler throw his tantrum, and then after he tires himself out he can take a nap to chill things out. I turned to full attention to Lord Stark, as I continued to dodge Theon's assault. You think you have won everything, don't you? Theon said, panting. You may have won my lands, this battle, and everything else, but I have won something you haven't. And what is that? A pity contest. I chuckled, but mildly interested to see where he was going with this. Sansa's cunt, Theon smirked, and gasps could be heard in the crowd. While you took my lands I made her a. I didn't know what happened next, but something snapped inside of me. Was it anger? Yes. Was it for what he said? Not really, I knew he was lying, but anger blinded my mind, and in the split of a second, I was in front of Theon, swinging at him with my bare fist, hitting him in the jaw with a powerful punch. I could feel its jaw shatter under my fist as tooths flew out of it. Not letting Theon recover, I grabbed him by his right arm, throwing him into the air, then I jumped up, delivering a powerful kick to his back and feeling his spine shatter into 1,000 pieces. Theon slammed into the ground with a heavy thud, screaming in pure pain, but it wasn't enough. I wanted more. I dashed towards the screaming bastard and punched in the face, feeling his nose shatter. I punched him again, tearing off part of his cheek. I continued to punch, with each hit being even harder than the last one, eventually making one of his eyes burst. Theon tried with all his might to cover up his face with his arms, but with a pair of powerful blows, I broke his arms, bending them beyond recognition. With nothing stopping me now, I punched him again and again and again, shattering what was left of his jaw, destroying the remaining teeth he had, crushing and deforming his lips. Theon was barely recognizable at this point, no longer looking human-like, but I don't care. I want him to suffer more, so I continue punching, tearing pieces of its flesh off with each punch. That was until I feel someone holding my fist softly. That's enough, please, he lied. Sansa said, holding my blood-covered fist with concern in her eyes, with her delicate hands covered in blood. Sorry you had to see that. I didn't love her, so why did I react so violently when he used such an obvious taunt? Why I felt the need to torture him so much? I could have ended this in a single attack, if death was my goal. I know it's your right to kill him, but please let me punish him. He not only insulted your honor but ours, Lord Stark requested as I stood up. Do as you please, but if I ever see him again, I will kill him. I sighed as I turned to the deformed Theon on the ground. If I didn't do it already. You won't see him again, Lord Stark said grimly. The Maester informed Theon will most likely die, and if he by miracle survived would be a quadriplegic blind cripple. Apparently the damage I had delivered was beyond any modern medicine to repair. I was holding back, mostly because I wanted him to suffer, so I held back. I wanted to see his life fade as I punched him. Anger during that fight you let control, powerful inside of you, the dark side of the corn, I feel, a raven said as he walked towards me. Great, just what I needed, a raven. Yoda, go away before Disney sues me, I chuckled. Come back, I will, for help I bring, the raven said as he flew away. But Raven Yoda was right. I let something so obviously fake fire up my emotions, and the worst part was, I was not even in love with Sansa. Yes, it would have angered me if she slept with another while I was fighting, but not to the point of going full batshit crazy. Knock knock. It's me, Sansa, can I come in? I heard Sansa request through the door. Sure, come in, I sighed. Sansa entered the room with a picnic kit on her hands and a soft smile. You still owe me a date, how about we have an inside picnic? Sansa inquired, smiling as if she didn't see me beat to a pulp someone she had known longer than me. Fine, that sounds lovely actually. I nodded as I sat on the floor of my room, seeing Sansa set up the picnic. Extra cheese on your sandwich, right? Sansa inquired with a smile. Yeah, go easy on the tomatoes, I nodded. All right. Here you go. Sansa gave me my double cheese meat sub, as she turned to make hers. So, how you've been? I asked, taking a bite of my sub. I've been great. Well, now that you are here, being apart made me realize that. Sansa flushed in a cute pink tone as she stared at me, that I love you. That might be a bit of a stretch, right? I mean, I know I'm charming, but... I coughed. You are everything I have ever dreamt in man. I can only hope I am everything you want in a woman, Sansa said without hesitation. I sighed. While I would have wanted her to fall for me on a later date, this was an inescapable event that would come one day. I wanted her to love me so she would be safe from all the shit she went through in the original timeline. But I wasn't mentally ready to speak with an 11/almost 12-year-old girl above love, so time to change the subject. Did Arya find out about your new hobbies? I chuckled. She did. I never saw her more happy and friendly with me, and now uses me as an excuse to learn. Mother was furious, saying a lady does not partake in such things. Sansa laughed. I imagined as much. And what did you tell her? I chuckled. Whatever a lady partakes in, be it cooking or sword fighting, it's ladylike, Sansa said, laughing even harder. Oh, no wonder she hates me so much, ahaha. If I knew you were going to tell her that, I would have won the war faster, just to see her face. I laughed. It was all good until she sent me to my room and punished me. Sansa pouted. I'll say it was worth it. I laughed. Arya seems to agree with you. She says that we are a new breed of ladies, the cool ladies. Sansa giggled. Oh god, ha ha ha, your sister is adorable. I laughed, choking a bit on my sub. She can be, sometimes, Sansa agreed with me. What did your father say, though? I inquired, cleaning my tears. He didn't say much. He found it amusing, but let mother punish us nonetheless, Sansa answered. We continued talking for hours as we ate and drank juices, of course. I really needed this. I haven't laughed in quite a while. Chapter 23. Chapter 22. After my little incident with Theon, I took some time to cool off, and roughly a couple of days after, I decided it was time to go back to Bear Island. Lord Stark so far had decided to keep the betrothal and unite our families even more. Theon on the other had died during that time, blood loss, severe trauma, and infection, but nobody can blame me. Robb was angry, but understood things like that can happen in duels or the likes, but he was also angry at Theon for insulting his sister. My situation with Sansa was weird now. Sansa was quite infatuated with me now, becoming a bit too clingy, but I suppose it is because she thinks I started a war to protect her, which was not the case. I did it because it had to be done. She was just a good excuse to do so, without getting any repercussions. This of course is not all bad, it was my end goal, and it will make my life easier once we marry. But it was too soon perhaps. Nonetheless, it was time to continue with my business ideas and evolve the north. With the hydroponic sheds being built in the north, I had to focus on finding who could provide silkworms. With them I would be able to create one of the most expensive items in the world, but for that to happen I would have to create some sort of warm environment for them. The harsh cold of winter would kill my poor silkworms in a matter of seconds. But now that I had Pike, I could expand my business there. After all, the climate there was warmer and more welcoming to this type of business, while by southern standards it was still cold. It was considerably less than any place in the north. Welcome home, my lord, Maej said with a warm gruff. Her eyes showed she was uncomfortable, not with me, but with our two visitors. Tywin and Tyrion Lannister. I had known for quite some time the lions were in my cave, and I knew why, and frankly it was getting boring. Take me to them, I sighed, as I turned my gaze to Sansa. I'm going to take care of some businesses. Take care, Sansa smiled. Follow me, Maej said without even questioning how I knew the lions were in my house. The room was dimly illuminated by candles, and had 3 chairs and a table. In one was sitting Tyrion drinking wine, while his father read a book. Lord Mormont, what a pleasant surprise, Tywin said, not even looking up from his book. Likewise Lord Lannister, to what do I owe this unexpected surprise? I inquired, taking the last empty chair, as I dismissed Maej out of the room. Please, let's not. I am well aware you knew I was here, Tywin said, putting his book on the table. Your spy network is on par with the spider. The difference is that unlike the spider, you can't be spied on. This was refreshing. I didn't expect him to be so straightforward. So you sent your son to do that? I think there are other ways to get rid of him, I chuckled. I agree with Lord Mormont, Tyrion chuckled back. You know why we are here, so let's talk about that. Tywin ignored us. Fine, my answer is no. I can also recite that in Low Valley Ryan it was already bad enough that I had to marry a teen soon. I was not going to downgrade this age situation to a kid. The Starks were trustworthy. If I married a Lannister I would wake up one day with a knife on my back, or simply I would not wake up. We can offer you so much more than the Starks, Tywin offered, and his tone said I will give you the North. Of course, he didn't voice this out, but he implied it. Tywin, while a cruel ruthless, never went back on a deal. He would ensure I had the North if I took his deal, but that deal had an unspoken underline, that if I took it I would basically be kneeling to him, for Tywin doesn't have allies, but subordinates, underlings. I know, but I most decline. I'm not interested. I had to thread carefully with him. If he considered an enemy too early into the story, things could get complicated. I gave my word, and I must uphold my honor. Tywin scoffed. Use that sentimental crap with Lord Stark. The offer will be always available, but hear me out. You will never marry Sansa Stark. I chuckled as I stood up my chair. That sounded like a threat, Lord Lannister. It's a warning. I might be interested in breaking the betrothal, but I won't be the one to do it, Tywin said, staring at me. When that unavoidable day comes, reach me out. It was pretty clear what he meant. Robert Baratheon will break this betrothal. To be honest, it had crossed my mind once or twice, but I never really considered this to be a real possibility. Robert loved Ned like a brother and would never force him to do that. But what if someone whispered to him that just like Rhaegar Targaryen, I was stealing Sansa from Joffrey? That alone would be enough to push the drunkard piece of shit to make something rash. You plan on manipulating the deck to your favor. I glared at him. Until then, Lord Mormont, Warden of the Iron Islands, Tywin said, leaving the room. A piece of advice, father always gets what he wants, Tyrion said, leaving the room. So do I, the old lion has his ways, so did I. After the Lannisters left my house, with the imminent warning of a plot starting to boil, I had to prepare. The king could break out betrothal, if was his right as the ruler of the Seven Kingdoms. I couldn't stop that without going to a war I knew I couldn't win. But he can't break a marriage. If I married Sansa, I would ensure to cut the cards Tywin had. But I couldn't marry Sansa until she had her first blood, which brought me back to square one. They can't leave me the fuck alone, shit just continues to come. Everyone wants to force me into the game. I just saved my betrothal and now is in fucking danger again. I can't catch a break. Can I? Fuck my life. With new problems in my way, I decided to let things flow. I had little control over what the king decided, but maybe I had control over what he heard. It was no secret Cersei Lannister was against the idea of me and Myrcella all the way. If I played my hand correctly, I could acquire a temporary ally to destroy the plot Tywin is boiling. But Cersei was a wild card. She was as unpredictable as they come, so I had to be sure of thinking this through. My other option was to befriend the drunkard bastard and ensure he would not be manipulated against me. Or option C, I could use Lord Stark connection to the king. So how was the meeting? Sansa inquired, entering my solar. Well, good is not a word I would use it to describe it. I sighed while getting a cup of wine. What happened? Sansa inquired, and for a moment I pondered, whether to be honest with her or not. She is to be my wife, so I should start trusting her more, and if by some reason they broke the betrothal, she needed to know why. So I decided to explain what happened. Well, you might want to sit down for this one. I sighed as I started to explain in detail the situation currently threatening our betrothal. She had to grow up sometime and understand that in this world, everyone plays the Game of Thrones whether they like it or not, and that even if she didn't want to, she was another player. Varys POV. A few months ago, the Queen ordered me to request a faceless man to kill Lord Mormont. Frankly, it was a tad much, but the Queen is like that. The faceless men operate in mysterious ways. The harder the target to kill, the higher the price. How they know how hard a person would be to kill is unknown, but they have their ways. When I asked for a quote, they gave me none. They simply informed said contract was no possible. It was clear they didn't want to take the contract, but why they didn't want to was unclear. Their words were even more mysterious. A man cannot kill that man. A life that has been blessed by the stranger is hard to take away, the faceless man said, leaving with me a new enigma. If a group of assassins that considered any life to be expendable considered him to be, as they called, blessed by their god, something was going on. Lord Mormont was already an unexpected mystery for me, and now things continued to make him more and more enigmatic. The Queen will not be happy with the price. I sighed as I walked down the hallway to meet her. If there was one thing I hated about this was not knowing, and I didn't know a thing about him. Chapter 24. Chapter 23. It's been a month since I explained Sansa the situation we were in. She understood with simplicity of what was going on but reacted as one would expect of a child, panicking. But like me, she shared the idea that I should contact the king. But considering Lady Stark wanted to end our betrothal, this was quite a delicate situation, so I decided to send a raven to deliver the message, telling Lord Stark about the plots the lions were cooking, while I focused on other important matters, getting my silkworms. Apparently there was one merchant in Essos that sold the little bastards, and he happened to be the one that had something I wanted. 3 dragon eggs. Magister Illyrio, not only he had a contact with someone that distributed silkworms for silk farms but also had 3 dragon eggs at his disposal, and he didn't know about their real value. If I managed to buy those little eggs, I would ensure that Daenerys never became a threat, to me at least. But those weren't the only dragon's eggs in the world. In total there were 5 eggs in this world, according to the books at least. One would be found or will be found by Euron Greyjoy, who will proceed to be an idiot and throw it into the sea, and the last one location is unknown. Some say is in Dragonstone, others say in Beyond the Wall, but no one can say for sure. With this in mind, I ordered one of my krakens, 2 ravens, and many other fish to find Euron, and keep an eye on him. Should he find the dragon egg, I would take it from him and kill the last Greyjoy. If I managed to collect all the dragon eggs, I would acquire 5 dragons, 5 mythical flying fire-breathing beasts, and I would become nearly unstoppable. I heard you are leaving, to Essos, Sansa said, entering my solar. It has been a month since we got back to Bear Island, and she was clearly not happy with me leaving so soon, but things had to be done, and I needed her in Winterfell to advocate against the Lannisters' plans. I'll be back. Besides, you get to be with your family for a bit. I know you miss Jane. I smiled as I whispered with a smirk, and Arya. Fine, but just so you know, Mother will try to persuade me to break our betrothal. Sansa pouted. That's why you will talk with your father. Only he can convince the king. As of now he hasn't break anything. I knew Sansa would talk with her father, and that Lord Stark knew thanks to my messenger what the Lannisters were plotting, and the wolves hated the lions, so with all this information he would at the very least show resistance to any idea about breaking my betrothal. I know, I have to be the one in our side, now that Mother is against us. Sansa sighed, grabbing my hand softly. Yes, you have, until we marry. I nodded, reciprocating her gesture. Be safe, I'll be back in a couple months, after I ensure some trading routes with Essos. And I'll be waiting. Sansa smiled. With Sansa going to stay with her family for a bit, and with me going over to Essos, things were starting to align in my favor. Everyone kept pushing into the game, one way or another they wanted me to play, so perhaps I had to play, so that I could destroy the game once and for all. I wasn't entirely sure, but one thing was sure, if I didn't play, they would keep poking me, testing my limit until I snapped. But to play the game I needed more than what I had, so I was determined to buy the dragon eggs the Magister had, and by the information I had, those 3 babies were quite expensive. But I would pay their hatched weight in gold if I had to. 3 dragons would highly increase my possibilities of winning. Sir, the ship is ready, one of the Ironborn said, respect and some light adoration in his eyes. No one would believe they wanted to kill me a couple of months ago. Then let's go, I ordered, getting inside the ship. My trip to Essos was, as I expected to be, boring and incredibly long. It would take a couple more days to arrive. Part of me was excited to see this new unknown land, but another part of me was stressed. The possibilities of finding my father and the bitch he married to were big. But I didn't have time to cling into the past. Without him being an idiot letting his dick control him, I wouldn't be here. I needed control to have success, and by no means the idiot of a father I was given in this life had the brain nor vision to understand that. We should be there in 5 days, my lord, the captain informed me. Good, I nodded, letting him know I wanted to be alone. But other thoughts crowded my mind. What if Sansa didn't succeed and Tywin managed to whisper the right words to the king? I had no political power to stop that. If the king said so, I was destined to lose her. Perhaps this was the way of the gods to show me I should be king. Only then, I would have the power to break this wretched wheel of plots and power. Ronard Mormont, the first of his name, I chuckled as I served a cup of wine. The things these political sharks push me to do. Perhaps this was the only way. Why aim for lordship when you can aim for kingship? Well, I hope you are happy, Tywin, because I'm in. Let the game begin. Cersei Lannister POV. Father wanted to break the betrothal between Ronard and Sansa, saying we needed to strengthen our bonds with the North, and had succeeded in manipulating the idiot I have for a husband. All it took was a couple of words to revive his emotions to what happened with Lyanna, and Robert started to consider breaking the betrothal. I don't know how, but he convinced Joffrey of supporting this charade, probably appealing to his sadistic side. Joffrey is into this just because it will bring sorrow to others. Robert has yet to make a decision, but one way or another the old lion gets his way. Robert Baratheon POV. Tywin came to visit. That old lion is nothing but trouble, but brought something to my attention that it was worth noticing. Tywin said that Sansa should be betrothed to Joffrey. At first I didn't mind, but Joffrey all of the sudden was infatuated with her. What if this was like Lyanna and me? I can't allow that to happen. What should I do? Damn it, Ned. It should have been you in this fucking chair. I growled as the wine boy poured more wine in my cup. HRMMMM idiot the king is. YRSSS unbeknownst to the king an incredibly wise and powerful raven was seeing everything. Joffrey Baratheon POV. Grandfather came and offered me a deal. He said I would make 2 important people suffer if I accepted. All I had to do was to make father believe I wanted Sansa Stark. I was delighted with the idea. The only bad part was I had to marry an ugly northerner, but I was to be king? And a king can do as he pleases. After I'm done with her I'll just kill her and make that bastard in the north suffer even more, knowing he never had her. I can't wait to see them suffer. Varys POV. Tywin had made his play, quite a dangerous one might I add. He is manipulating the king to do his bidding, so that the crown has the north, and so that he can betroth his granddaughter to the young lord. This will end bad, I can feel it. The tides of the game are changing, and the realm is in danger. I wonder if this will make Lord Mormont enter the game? He is now one of the big players. Things are just getting complicated. Chapter 25, Chapter 24. Essos, or to be precise Pentos, was quite a charming place. It almost made the month-long trip worth it. The place was like most tropical places with sun, beaches, and a lot of business. But I didn't come here for pleasure. I had a mission, or I should say I had 2 missions. First I had to get some silkworms to produce silk and sell it in Westeros, and 2 I needed to buy the dragon eggs Magister Illyrio had. There was always the possibility the eggs would not hatch while in my possession, but even if they didn't hatch it was infinitely better than to allow someone else to have an edge on me. Even if they didn't hatch they were worth their price, because I would be taking a threat out of the equation long before it became a threat. You guys stay in the ship and protect it, I ordered my man as I stepped out of the ship. Aye my lord. The men shouted in agreement. Finding Magister Illyrio wasn't that hard at all. All it took was ask a couple of locals, and I was soon heading in the right direction. Though there was a little cloud of doubt looming above my head. What if he refused to do business with me because he supports the Targaryen? And if he did accept to make a trade route with me, would I meet Viserys? For what I read in the books he was quite the pretentious moron, so he might want to make me kneel for him. That or offer me Daenerys' hand in marriage if I give him my army, which was tempting by itself. If he did, he would die and I would have a claim to the throne. Of course this was in the case Robert Baratheon was stupid enough to make an enemy of me by breaking my betrothal to Sansa. I didn't want to break my betrothal, not because I loved Sansa, because I didn't, but because I wanted to stay out of the game and have a lordly life. I didn't care before who sat in the Iron Throne. But they kept pushing me, testing me, plots within plots to make me their ally, to kill me, or to manipulate me. They forced me into the game. And if the worst case scenario came to happen, and Tywin Lannister succeeded in his mission, well, I would formally enter the Game of Thrones. And Daenerys would give me an army if that happened. Military alliances with Dorne, which by itself was a step in the right direction. I of course would save Sansa even if I didn't love her. She was someone I came to care about. I wouldn't stay and watch her suffer under the lions. But all this was just based on the hypothetical scenario Tywin succeeds in breaking my betrothal. Sometimes I wondered, what would have happened if I killed him in Bear Island? A man can dream. I just don't understand what is he thinking. I understand he wants Sansa to keep the north, but what makes him think I will accept Myrcella after all the shit he is putting me through? Does he really thinks I will just fall in line and bend my knee to him? I will enjoy killing the old man. I chuckled drily, fantasizing of all the ways I would torture the old lion before cutting his miserable head. I might even make a weekend out of it. Robert Baratheon POV. Jonaran, that man was like a father to me, and all of the sudden he was death. One day he was scolding me for spending too much gold on whores and drinks, and the next he was gone. I was left alone in this nest of vipers. I needed someone I could trust. I needed Ned with me, here ruling for me while K-Horde, the way it was supposed to be. I also needed to ensure my son didn't marry someone like his mother, full of vile and hate. In the end, Sansa was the best choice for him. Ned was honorable and so were his kids. The Mormont brat would understand. My son wanted Sansa, and perhaps if he married out of love, and not like I did with the viper of his mother, he would have a better married life. It was time to go to the north, and get my last friend alive to help me rule this shitty place. Back to Ronard POV. Magister Illyrio was quite the extravagant man. His castle was extravagant or sure, full of gold and over-the-top expensive decorations. Physically Illyrio was morbidly obese, complete with pig's eyes and fat cheeks with a disgustingly oily-looking beard. Personally, all I knew about him was that he was one of the only friends Varys had, and that he supported the Targaryens. Welcome Lord Mormont, Illyrio said warmly. He didn't seem to have any hostility against me. Then again, he was a businessman and it was a requirement to hide your emotions while making businesses. A pleasure to be here, Magister Illyrio. I smiled, offering my hand for a handshake which he took reluctantly. So what brings you all the way here to Essos? Illyrio inquired as we walked through his garden. I want to make some trade routes, and buy some things I was told only you can provide, I admitted. I see, Illyrio hummed. I'm glad I can be of assistance, and by the way, if you don't mind, can I ask you a few questions? Sure, be my guest. I nodded, intrigued to what he wanted to know. How is Westeros? All I get is outdated information, Illyrio chuckled. Well, that is one complicated questions with an even complicated answer. I chuckled. I knew what he was doing. He wanted to see where my alliances align with. Well, for starters, the Ironborn are no longer raiding or raping. Did the god themselves descend? Illyrio inquired. I knew he knew about it. He is friends with the spider. He has to be at least well informed. In a way, I sighed. I was tired of their ways, so I took control over them. So you are the new warden of the Iron Islands, Illyrio said in a matter-of-fact way. Yes, I nodded. Very well, so what did you wanted to buy from me? Illyrio inquired, seemingly done with the questions for now. I want silkworms, as many as you can provide, and a collectible item you have. It was the moment of truth. Would he sell me the eggs or deny their existence? What item, may I ask? Illyrio inquired curiously. 3 dragon eggs, I informed him. I want to buy them from you. For a moment Illyrio was quiet and didn't say a word, and I expected the worst, but after a minute he said, sure, I will be sad to part with them, but the gold will soothe that pain. They are quite expensive, you know. Gold is not a problem, I smiled. I had succeeded at least in one of my endeavors so far. Just what I like to hear. Illyrio laughed, making his belly and man tits bounce in a disturbing manner. The silkworms will take a couple of months. They are brought from far away. You are welcome to stay with me during that time. I smiled. That sounds lovely. I just have to let my men know we'll be here for a while then. You came without guards to my castle. While the trust is appreciated, Essos is not safe. I'll send some unsullied with you, Illyrio said. Little did he know, unless a battalion came for me, I was good. Thanks once again, I smiled, as I took off back to my ship with a dozen unsullied guards protecting me. Varys POV. I had contacted Illyrio beforehand, when I found out the young lord of the Iron Islands and the Bear Island was on his way to meet him. If we played our cards well, we could gain a powerful ally to the realm. All my old friend had to do was ensure he stayed for a bit. The king, Robert Baratheon, was never a good man in keeping relationships. Dorne already hates him, and now that he is in process to break the betrothal between the young lord and Sansa, and he will also make an enemy of the Iron Islands. But like they said, the enemy of my enemy is my ally. This opened a new realm of possibilities. The young bear was smart, capable, and a dangerous foe, but if we moved the tides to our favor, his tides to our favor, and presented him with an option once his betrothal ended abruptly, we would gain his support to put the Targaryen dynasty back in the throne. It was certainly better to marry the princess to someone in the realm. Her brother had other ideas, but I didn't know how he would react. He was in the end a wild card. I'll be leaving to Essos for some business. Tell the king and queen, I told Pycelle. For what? Pycelle inquired. To renegotiate the price of a life like the queen asked me to. Lies, 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 lies make the world run and keep castles together. How I dream of a world without lies. Chapter 26. Chapter 25. This place really makes me forget all the shit I have to deal with back home. I chuckled, seeing the view through my balcony. The room I was given was quite luxurious, nothing to what I was accustomed to, making me feel like in a 5-star hotel. From the balcony I could see my ship from afar. Everything was quite comfortable. But all good things have to come to an end. Sometime later after my arrival at Pentos, one of my raven arrived with dire but no unexpected news. Jonaran had died like he did in the original series and the king wanted to break my betrothal and get Ned to be his hand. Tywin managed to do what he wanted for the last time. Ned of course could still say no, but my chances were low. Caw. What do we do? Caw Raven Rangers. The Raven started to sing the new theme song for his squad. Nothing. Any news about Euron? I inquired, chuckling at my feathered friend. Nothing so far Caw, but we know the spider is coming to Essos. The Raven shook his head in shame. It's okay, I have these for now. I smiled showing him the dragon eggs, who cost me a big, and I mean big chunk of money. Caw, do you want me to sit on them and brood them? The Raven said approaching the massive eggs and sitting on them trying to give them enough warmth to hatch them. No, but you can try, I chuckled. Brothers, we have to brood these eggs, the Raven shouted, and immediately after 12 Raven entered and sat on the eggs. We will be good parents Caw? I Caw? We'll teach them the pleasure of corn I will teach them the pleasure of killing? Caw? They will be super ravens, my maternal instincts feel it Caw. I laughed for a good time as I saw the ravens shifting positions to make sure every inch of the eggs was covered in feathers and warmth. After a few minutes all I could see was a ball of feathers that was composed of ravens. Pushing the laugh out, I started to focus. After all, it was time to play the game. They managed to push me to the point I actually joined this disgusting game. If King Robert did in the end break my betrothal, I would answer accordingly, in war. If I didn't do anything after what he was about to do, I would be seen by my men as a coward, and I would lose their respect. And I couldn't let that happen. War was looming above my head, and was one of the main reasons I traveled all the way to Essos. While I was safe in my lands, because none of the 7 kingdoms had a chance to invade me, I didn't have the firepower to win the war. But here in Essos there were many possibilities, many things I could acquire for the upcoming war. The Unsullied, the Dothrakis, the Second Sons. If push comes to shove, I would have many options to increase my military power, and take control over Essos and the 7 kingdoms. How is your day, Lord Mormont? Illyrio inquired as he entered the room he gave me. Fine so far, worried about stuff in my home, nothing to concern you about. It has been almost 2 weeks since I got to Essos, and I had yet to see the Targaryens. I see. Illyrio trailed off seeing my ravens, all staring at him. My pets, don't pay much attention to them. I laughed, aren't they adorable? I suppose, Illyrio said, still eyeing my ravens. So any particular reason you wanted to see me, Magister? I inquired, eyeing the man carefully. I wanted to let you know, my contact for the silkworms will be arriving in 3 weeks, Illyrio smiled. He thinks that I'm not aware of this, but I'll let him play his game until the spider arrives. Thanks for letting me know, Daenerys Targaryen POV. It's been 2 weeks since Lord Mormont arrived. Magister Illyrio is making sure we don't meet him, because as of now he is unsure where his alliances align. All we know about him is that he was about the same age as me, and that he started as a small lord that ended up taking control of the Iron Islands, becoming the warden of them. We were in different areas of the castle to avoid seeing each other. My brother didn't understand why we were hiding from him. He said that any lord should kneel before him, for he was the dragon. You think he will help us? I asked Viserys. Magister Illyrio is making sure he is trustworthy, Viserys answered, not even looking at me, but it doesn't matter, soon he will kneel to the dragon. Nobody should wake the dragon, it's something Viserys has burned into my soul. Ned Stark POV. A lot of things were happening in my lands at the same time, bad omens for the north. Lord Mormont had gone to Essos, dire wolves that were thought to be extinct, appearing soon after. Jonaran, a man that seemed he would outlive us, died. King Robert was coming. Things would end bad, I could feel it. Jonaran is dead, and the king is coming. I sighed. You know what he wants, Ned. You can always say no, Cat begged. I can't. I couldn't let my old friend be alone in the south. He needed someone to rely on. Yes, you can say no. Cat shouted. You fought a war for him. You know as well as I do Starks don't do well in the south. I sighed. But if not that you can't, is that you won't, Cat said, angry. Back to Ronard Mormont POV. I decided that while I waited for the spider, I would get to know the city and see how my men were doing, leaving my ravens brooding the eggs affectionately, which was weird. They were all mom mode now. The city was full of life to say the least, with people buying and selling stuff, and it generally gave a vibe that seemed to match the Middle Eastern in my world. But I wasn't out just exploring, I was gathering information. With a war looming above my head, I had to explore new possibilities. Like how much did the Unsullied cost? How much did the Second Sons cost? What were the Dothraki believed and how to exploit them? For the first one, the Unsullied costed a fucking ton of gold. The Second Sons were almost as expensive as they were. Now the Dothraki were an easy target if I wanted to increase my army exponentially in number. It was quite simple. They believed in some kind of horse god, and I happened to be able to control animals. All I had to do was make their horses kneel and they would take it as an omen that I was the great stallion that would ride the world or something. But like the Ironborn, their culture was disgusting and had to be molded. Without even noticing, as I pondered with the many scenarios where this could go, I arrived at the coast, where my ships were. My lord, how is everything? One of my men asked, as I approached. The same as always, I sighed. Had you guys had any troubles with the locals? Nay, we are keeping ourselves inside the ship. We take turns to go out and The man started to get nervous, which by his body language implied they were going for whores but were afraid to tell me. I don't care if you fuck all the whores in Pentos, as long as they willingly accept, I chuckled. The man started to laugh out loud. Well, they aren't complain, they are sucking the gold out of our dicks. I laughed, seeing how visibly relaxed he got, knowing I didn't see whoring as something bad. Not necessarily. I don't see you complaining about the gold you are losing. Nay, is a good way to lose gold. The man laughed even harder. I suppose, I chuckled as I took a sit close to him. Don't bring me problems with the locals, their compliance is necessary. For now, I will be more careful. I'll tell the man they can't get too drunk. The man nodded. Make sure you do that. I nodded. Chapter 27, Chapter 26 Sansa Stark POV. It has been almost a month and a half since Ronard left to Pentos. I missed him every day, but now I had a new friend to keep me busy. Lady. Father and my brothers had found some dire wolves while they left for an execution. Lady was the best. I always wanted a dog, but this is certainly better. I wonder what Ronard is doing. He is going to miss the king and the royal family coming. I miss him, a lot. Come on, Lady, we have to get ready. I petted Lady, who stretched a bit and proceeded to follow me. Ronard Mormont POV. Today, like any other day, I was walking through Illyrio's garden, wondering how things will end up playing. It has been a month since Illyrio told me that his contact aka the spider would arrive in a fortnight, and he still hadn't, and by now the novelty of being in Pentos had worn out. The last raven I sent to check the estimated arrival time told me that the sea was wild at this moment and it would take some time for the spider to arrive. The spider has arrived, a raven informed me, slowly descending into my shoulder. Finally, the master of whispers arrived. Let's go and get ready to meet him. I smiled. Things were calm for the moment. The king had yet to break my betrothal. That would in turn open a metaphorical box of Pandora. Taking a deep breath, I cleared my thought as I walked to my room, to get a bath and get ready. The spider was already in Pentos. How are the eggs, by the way? I asked the raven on my shoulder. Asterisk caw? Nothing so far, we are increasing the amount of brooding. Asterisk, the raven answered. Alright, keep me posted. I chuckled. Varys POV. It took a bit more than I expected to arrive. The sea was particularly on my side this trip, but I managed to get to Pentos in one piece. Long time no see, old friend. Illyrio greeted me with a smile. It's always a pleasure. I smiled. Where is the young lord? Taking a bath, getting ready for something, Illyrio answered. Impressive, but hardly unexpected. The young lord knew I was coming. I wonder if he knows the Targaryen are here? He never stops to surprise me. He knows I am here. How could he know? Illyrio inquired with puzzlement. The young lord is full of surprises. One of them is how well informed he is, and how little informed we are about him. Information just goes one way with him, I admitted. He was the hardest person in the world to spy on. Every house knew this, for their spies would suddenly appear dead or worse. I see, if you said so, it's hard not to believe it. Illyrio sighed. Let him know we are waiting for him. It was time to see if we could move the tides of the young bear to our favor, and ensure the safety of the realm. I will. Illyrio nodded. Back to Ronard POV. I was ready to personally meet the spider. While I originally expected to meet him on King's Landing, this was also acceptable. The game pushed me out of the path I was walking. It sucked into this wretched world. I was still with one foot on my old path and one in the new one. If they broke my betrothal, I would be officially and irrevocably in the game. But at this point my betrothal was just an excuse. I knew my breaking point was near, whether they broke my engagement or not. I knew I would join the game one way or another, because I was tired of it. Tywin just pushed me into this path earlier than it was supposed to happen on its own. My contact is here. Illyrio entered my room with a smile, but something was different. He was looking at me differently. He knew I knew. Neat. So the spider is here. Well, time to crawl into his web. I chuckled, getting a mild look of surprise from Illyrio. Follow me, Illyrio finally managed to say, walking out of my room, with me following him close behind. And there he was sitting in the shadows, the spider, waiting for me. To what do I owe the pleasure? I inquired, sitting on a chair in front of him. Illyrio also sat down on the opposite end. Not many would consider meeting me a pleasure, but I suppose you are the exception for many things, Varys said, serving himself and me a cup of wine. I grabbed the cup and took a sip, and smiled. So how in the realm? Good, for now, Varys sighed. Is my betrothal still active? Being honest with the spider was possibly the best. He was already cryptic enough. You can consider it broken. Varys took a deep breath. Lord Tywin wants you, and with Sansa in the south and your alliance to the north, he would get you even if you didn't marry Myrcella. I chuckled, anger building within my very core. But the old lion, while terrifying, lacks something, Varys said with a soft smile. He lacks vision. He thinks himself above anyone, including the king. He thinks like the rest you will fall into line and do as he pleases, but you won't, am I right? I stared at Varys with an excruciating look before bursting into laughs. For not being able to spy on me, you sure know me. I used to gather information before having spies. While certainly harder, I know some bits about you. Not much, but enough to get a general idea of who you are, Varys admitted. Impressive nonetheless, I nodded, as my tone grew colder and my eyes became darker. You do realize, while I don't love Sansa, I have to respond to this insult, right? I do. I just thought I could use this for the betterment of the realm. Varys nodded. You want to use me to put the Targaryens on the throne, the same ones in this castle. I chuckled darkly, making Illyrio choke on his wine. Varys looked impressed for a short amount of time before he sighed and nodded. I do. You must know the next in line to the throne is even worse than our current king. And as we have seen during the last few months, that threshold is vast. I chuckled. It is, Varys chuckled. I suppose this is the part where you propose me a deal, I said, cutting to the grain. I do. Varys nodded. You will be without betrothal soon. How about we make a new one? You want me to marry Princess Daenerys Targaryen? I chuckled, already expecting this development. I do. Varys nodded. Daenerys wasn't a bad match, but if the spider thought I would kneel to Viserys, he had another thing coming. Daenerys Targaryen POV. Viserys has started talking with Magister Illyrio about my future possible betrothals, to ensure him an army. I didn't want to marry anyone in Essos. I wanted to go home, but Viserys didn't care. He said he would let a Dothraki horde fuck, including their horses, if they gave him an army. Gods please help me. Back to Ronard Mormont POV. I told Varys I couldn't just accept the betrothal while I still had one with Sansa, but if we thought the betrothal broke, I would accept under certain conditions. He would have to ensure safe return for Sansa and Arya to the north, if he provided that I would join his crusade to put a Targaryen on the throne. While I didn't love Sansa, I came to care for her. She was but an innocent girl too young that was about to learn the harsh truth of reality. She didn't deserve all the suffering coming her way, and if it was in my power I would stop it. Though I never said what Targaryen I would put on the throne, I didn't pretend to put Viserys on it, and besides, if Daenerys was to marry me, she would be a queen, my queen. It's not my fault Varys left so many blanks on his deal, but perhaps, the spider knew about them, and didn't care. He seemed crafty enough. After our mutual agreement, where he would ensure the Stark sisters went back to the north when all the future shit of the game exploded, and in return I would marry Daenerys and help him save the realm, he left, saying that his presence was needed in the realm, not without telling me I would meet the Targaryen siblings soon. Time to plan. I sighed in my room, as I heard my ravens talking about how good they were brooding. Comment. 116 comment. Chapter 28, Chapter 27. After my meeting with Varys, and our mutual agreement to help each other out, him because he wanted the best for the realm, and me because I was tired of the game, I took a couple days to cool off and organize my thoughts, before the imminent war started. I knew Varys was right. I knew before he even said it. My betrothal was as good as broken. The king had that kind of power, and Lord Stark, while probably not happy with this development, would do nothing to stop him. So much for honor. And to add a cherry over the top, Catelyn's love for me didn't help. She hated me, and wanted to get rid of my betrothal with Sansa, so the idea of her daughter being a queen in the future would sure sweeten the deal. They are ready, Illyrio announced, letting me know the Targaryen siblings were ready to meet me. Very well, I nodded. I followed the Magister through his castle, while deep in thought. This time my marriage, if both parties agreed, would be immediate. I would have to sleep with her after the ceremony. She was older than Sansa by 2 or 3 years, being around me age, but unlike my time with Sansa, there would be no room for romance, or make her fall in love with me. I would have to do that after we married. Life finds a way to fuck with you. We are here. Illyrio woke me up from my train of thought, just in time to see the royal siblings standing in front of me. Daenerys and Viserys. Daenerys was a young woman in her early teens. Daenerys had the classical Valyrian look, with beautifully unique violet eyes, pale skin, and long, pale silver gold hair. She had a slender frame, with average-sized breasts. Daenerys, in other words, she was beautiful. Viserys, like his sister, had the classical Valyrian features, with pale skin, silver blonde hair, but instead of having purple eyes he had pale lilac eyes. Viserys was the first one to approach, and I could already tell I would not like him in the least. He had that air while walking that said, "I'm superior to you in every way, and you should kneel." "A pleasure to meet you," Viserys said, expecting me to bow. Likewise, I nodded. I could practically hear him shout inside his head, because I didn't bow. "So we have things to discuss, right?" I said, taking a seat. Viserys nodded, gesturing to follow him. I ignored him and proceeded to introduce myself to the princess. "A pleasure to meet you, my lady." I kissed her hand, trying to make a good first impression. "The pleasure is mine, my lord." Daenerys smiled shyly. It was hard to imagine that in the original timeline she would grow to be quite the fearsome leader. Right now she was a shy, sheltered girl. With my introductions done, I followed Viserys, who wanted to kill me for ignoring him, to discuss our alliance. I didn't like to lie, but I could manipulate by omission. "As you know, I'm the rightful king of the 7 kingdoms, Viserys said in a matter-of-fact tone. If this wasn't a political meeting I would have laughed at him, but for now I would indulge the king of nothing. I heard, I nodded. "You can provide me an army, I can provide you a wife." Viserys sat down with a smug expression. "Seems like good trade, don't you think?" If I loved her, then yes, it would an equal exchange, but it wasn't. 1 woman for army was utterly ridiculous, but she did had her political advantages, that after Viserys died, as her husband I would have a claim to the Iron Throne, and more. "So you want my army, and you'll give me your sister?" I inquired. "Yes, that, and for you to bend the knee." Viserys nodded. "We'll talk after the war." There was no way in hell I would kneel to him. Viserys shifted his position on the chair uncomfortably, not expecting opposition from me. "I'm your king. Don't worry, I will give the Targaryens their rightful place in the throne." I chuckled, making him relaxed visibly, but he didn't read the underline of my comment. I said I would give a Targaryen the throne. I never said who. Then let's prepare the wedding, so we can leave and take what's mine, Viserys said, not pushing the kneeling thing any longer. We can't win, not with my army alone. I stopped his idiotic train of thought. Are you going back to what we just agreed on? Viserys inquired angrily. I don't recall agreeing to anything. Is he really that desperate? But let's follow his train. No, what I meant is I need a bigger army, and Essos can provide that. Viserys eyed me for a second before asking, what do you plan to do? I plan to increase my numbers, only then taking the 7 kingdoms is plausible, I informed him, wondering how stupid he was. Not once in my conversation I said, I would give him an army, yet he assumes so. For now that will do. I see, and how do you plan to increase our numbers? Viserys asked. By making a deal with the Dothraki, I smiled, little did he know what I had planned. Very well, I give you permission to proceed, Viserys said, and I had to control my urge to slap some sense into the entitled bastard, but the wedding must proceed, immediately. He really wants to see our alliance be sealed. Sadly he didn't have much time ahead of him. Sadly he wasn't going to be here to see his family back on the throne, well me on the throne, but with his sister, which still counts. As you wish, I nodded. I never expected to marry Daenerys. I considered her a threat until the lion fucked my chill path over. Sansa Stark POV. My betrothal was broken. It didn't matter how much I begged father or mother, they simply didn't care. I loved Ronard. I was to marry the prince. There was a time I wanted to marry the prince. Yes, he was handsome, but I didn't want him anymore. I wanted to be his lady, Lady Mormont. But there is nothing I can do. The king was the one to break it. There was nothing Ronard could do. Why life had to be so cruel with me. I'll miss him. He was so kind and nice with me, I said between tears as Jane tried to make me feel better. Maybe the prince will take your broken heart and mend it, Jane offered. It seemed I was destined like mother to marry without love, but unlike mother I loved beforehand. I loved him. Would I love another after my heart was already taken? I don't care. I couldn't see any positive side to this, but perhaps Jane was right. Perhaps the prince would be kind and soothe my broken heart eventually. Ned Stark POV outside Winterfell bunting with Robert. As we left Winterfell, all I could think was how Robert broke Sansa's betrothal and how he had put me in a political whirlwind of like he would say shit. The Mormont invited in my household that day left with their soldiers without saying a word, and so did the Ironborn. They took it as an insult. Robert said to let them go and to not worry, that he would call for the kid to bend the knee, like he should have done after taking control of the Iron Islands. For fuck's sake Ned, stop with that face, Robert grumbled. I broke my word, you made me break my word. I growled. It's not like it's the first time, or the bastard was an honorable action, Robert growled back. The brat will understand or his head will roll. Simple as that Ned, our families need to be together. I couldn't be with Lyanna. I won't let my son suffer the same fate. If only you knew who really was the bastard as you called it, you would have my head Robert. I still don't like it. The lad was nothing but honorable and I broke his trust and possibly my relationships with his family. He alone made the fucking North better and with this shit you pulled I might have fucked that. Fuck the kid, if he brings your boy problems I'll smash his head myself, so stop crying Ned, Robert laughed. I eyed him, maybe in the past that promise would have had some weight, now he was the one with weight not his words. I might be fat, but I still can swing my hammer, Robert said as if reading my mind. I see the lad fight, you'd better lose some weight if you want to fight him, I chuckled drily. Ha 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 that's it Ned, lighten up, Robert laughed. Chapter 29, Chapter 28. Author note, here you go, if you want to read ahead what I have done so far be sure to check my Patreon. So far I'm 10 chapters ahead. Chapter 38. https://www.patreon.com/cornbringer. When Viserys said he wanted to proceed with the marriage immediately I did not expect to be so literal. We spoke about our pseudo-alliance a week ago, and today was my wedding day. What a joy. I wasn't particularly thrilled with the idea. I guess I'm still hang-ups with the social spectrums of my first world. There is something about marrying so young, and marrying without any kind of love that makes it feel devoid of anything. But I suppose it was a long time coming, though I originally expected to be marrying Sansa. After all while I didn't love her I was fond of her, but in the end it appears that wasn't meant to happen. Now here I was getting ready for my big day. Normally marriage customs in this world vary considerably between the lands, cultures, and major faiths. Considering I was from the north, but Daenerys was from the south, and taking note that I was now the Lord of the Iron Islands it kinda left me with problems to pick the ceremony style. For a South-style wedding I would need the presence of particular sacred witnesses aka the Septon mostly because the faith of the Seven was the major religious cult in the South. For a North-style wedding I would need to marry in front of a heart tree to pay respect to the old gods. Now for an Iron-style wedding I would need a priest or priestess to pay our respects to the drowned god while we said our vows. What all these things have in common is that the wedding is followed by a feast, where the bride and groom aka me, eat, drink and dance with everyone. Afterwards comes the tricky part, the bedding ceremony takes place, where the marriage is finally and absolutely consummated, or like some say babies are produced to ensure the family line. So basically I was left with no other choice than to marry Daenerys in the Iron Way and bed her. But because we didn't have a priest that worshipped the drowned god, we had to get a red priest, the ones that worshipped the Lord of Light. Everything is ready, Illyrio said as I walked to seal my fate with a girl I only knew in books. Let this wedding start. I smiled as I followed him. The priestesses agreed to marry us according to our culture, but the blessing would be on the Lord of Light. The red priestess that we got assigned was like I expected, very similar to Melisandre, and I couldn't help but wonder, did she have the same magic powers the red witch had? Shaking the thoughts out of my head, I walked to my position, as I waited. Eventually, after a few seconds, Daenerys came with her brother, walking side by side, until she was in front of me. The priestess smiled as she started the ceremony. Who comes before the god of light this night? Viserys replied, Daenerys, of the house Targaryen, comes here to be wed. A woman grown, trueborn and noble. She comes to beg the blessing of the gods. Who comes to claim her? This was my cue, so I took a step forward and said, Ronard of House Mormont, Lord of the Bear and Iron Islands. Who gives her? Viserys replied as he stepped off the scene, Viserys of the House Targaryen, who is her brother and protector. Yeah, sure, like you have done such a good job at protecting her. The priestess smiled as she began, we are gathered here today in the sight of God of Light and men to bear witness to the joyous occasion that is marriage between Lady Daenerys and Lord Ronard. This was it. After today my vows I would have an entirely new responsibility, an entirely new mission, there would be no going back, I would have to take the throne. The priestess added, snapping me out my revere, Lady Daenerys, do you take this man? Daenerys hesitated for a second, and I didn't blame her, she hardly knew me, but after a second of silence she said, I take this man. The priestess then turned her ruby-colored eyes to me and asked, Lord Ronard, do you take this woman? This was the moment of truth, the moment when I officially entered the game, I take this woman. Daenerys and I joined hands, as the priestess tied our hands together with a red ribbon as she said, in the sight of the Lord of Light, I hereby seal these two souls, binding them as one, for eternity. After that the priestess instructed us to look upon one another and say the words, our vows. At this point, I was staring at Daenerys' purple eyes as she stared into mine, facing each other as we recited the following vow in unison, I am his/hers and she/he is mine from this day until the end of my days, we are one. After a second of silence, we joined our souls, our destinies with a kiss, sealing our fate with fire and ice. The party started with all the invited people dancing, drinking and eating. I didn't know any of them except for my men, who were enjoying the feast to its fullest. Every now and then, someone would come and present me or my wife a gift. Illyrio gave Daenerys a beautiful chest with extremely expensive jewelry. Viserys gave her sister a silver-colored mare. That put me into alert mode, considering Drogo was the one to give that to her. Did he contact Thickel? How else did he acquire such horse? I had no men to fight 40,000 Dothraki. Were they here? After a second of consideration I decided to ignore the obvious red flag for now, considering that the Dothraki were many things and had many skills, but subtlety was definitely not on their list, so if I didn't see them, is because they weren't here. As people continued to come and go, one among them caught my attention. He was looking at me with regret. It was someone I haven't seen in 5 years. Jorah Mormont. Anger I didn't know I had saved up against him was suddenly quite tangible. I wanted to kick him, beat him up, frankly I wanted to break him. But not today, I had other problems today. So, wife. I chuckled. Daenerys turned her beautiful purple eyes to me and said, yes. I know we are both in the unknown here, I hardly know you, and you hardly know me, but we can try to get to know each other. I offered. This was bound to be harder for her than it was for me, by a big margin. Daenerys gave me a look that said she didn't expect me to be so human as she said, that would be nice. The party continued with Daenerys considerably less scared than she was before with the anticipation of how or who was I as a person. She certainly was feeling better, still full of doubt, but at least now she didn't look like she was going to die at any given moment. I, for the other hand, was showing a completely different face to what I actually felt. I was smiling on the outside, but inside my inner mini Ronards were having a mental breakdown. Any time now I would have to bed her, and yes, we were around the same age, and for me it was bad, but frankly at this point it wasn't so much that she was younger, it was that I didn't want to hurt her, to do something that would scar her. Bedding ceremony. My men shouted, and they really should thank God. I didn't have heat vision as a power or they would be long gone. It didn't take much to make everyone start their chant, as they pushed us, gently into the room. All I could think or process inside my mind as the door to our room drew closer was, fuck chapter 30, chapter 29, and so wedding night started, the big point changer in my story, where I had to accept my new life as it was with all its ups and downs. I can't keep running from things that don't match my understanding of my past laws. I was whether I liked it or not in a new world, and they were things that were expected of me. This of course would have been easier if it wasn't because my ravens had warmed the bed for me, filling it with what they called soft feathers, as they whispered in my mind several mating rituals, to ensure, let's forget it. Of course I ignored them. All I could do was accept my unavoidable destiny, so with that in mind I decided to get to know Daenerys as I could before we consummated our marriage, but getting to know someone in less than 10 minutes was impossible to say the least. For her I was stranger, for me she was someone I read about. We were basically in the same position, in the unknown, but for her it was more difficult. Her brother practically sold her for an army. Would she end up as mad as she did on the TV series? Or would my presence in this world prevent such development? It will hurt, I sighed. I had experience with women in my past life, but I never made love to a virgin. All I knew was what I have heard or read about. I will be as gentle as I can. Daenerys shifted uncomfortably, not knowing what to say. She had yet to give me consent, and no matter what I was not gonna take that step without consent. I won't do anything if you are not comfortable. I smiled, trying to sound as soothing as possible. I know that I'm a stranger for you, and frankly it's not easy. Daenerys looked at me for a second before she smiled. No. I want to do this. And our marriage started with a kiss. I knew warming the bed and making it softer with our feather was the best idea. Hooray. Ravens for the win. I don't know how many hours we were in our room, consummating our marriage, but time started to feel loose of meaning. I was in the bed, looking at my wife, as she eyed with curiosity the dragon eggs that I bought, that were originally intended for her. I always wanted to see a dragon. Daenerys smiled. Life might surprise you. Life might. One day you might. Who knows? Daenerys looked at me as she put the egg back in the box. That sounds like a dream. And often dreams come true. I chuckled, as my wife went to bed with me, resting her head on my bare chest. I dozed off into sleep as I brushed my wife's hair with my fingers. Underneath us were our blood-stained covered sheets, that marked me as her first and last man, because unlike Drogo, I was not going to die and leave her alone. I took a vow to keep her safe, and that I would leave long enough to sit in the Iron Throne and rule it all. I woke up next morning with Daenerys cuddling close to me, her naked body touching me ever so gently. My wife, the future mother of my children. I was not stupid to think I loved her already, but one day I would, and one day she would love me. I carefully got out of bed, making sure to not wake up my possibly sore wife. Once I was out of the bed, I started putting on my clothes, getting ready to face the new problems ahead of me. Once I was fully dressed, I got out of the room, being equally careful to not wake her up with a sudden noise or something. I then proceeded to walk to meet with Viserys, and discuss our plans. He would have to die, but the how and when was the thing. So you finally come out. It is unwise to leave you king waiting, Viserys said with a somewhat angry attitude, as he stood there with a smug demeanor on his face. I stared at him for a second, wondering if cutting his head would improve his attitude, but for now I had to wait for the right moment. But regardless of that, I wasn't going to let this pretentious bastard tell me what to do. Get used to it, I practically growled in response, daring him to take that obviously borrowed sword out. Viserys ignored my comment as he asked, "Where is my sister?" "Sleeping," I informed him. "Go and wake her up." Viserys turned her attention to a maid who nodded. But before the maid was able to leave, I blocked her path. "She's sleeping, and she will remain sleeping. I want her here," Viserys hissed. "And I want to leave my wife sleeping," I growled. "Who the fuck he thinks he is? She is my wife, and is my responsibility now. That means I get to decide things like this, so don't test me, unless you want to try true despair." I left the room, leaving a threat floating in the air. Daenerys was mine now. Mess with her and I'll cut you pretty head off. Viserys was visibly shocked, as I left, and his hand moved towards his sword but didn't do much more than that. Jorah Mormont POV. In accordance with my deal with Varys, I came to pledge loyalty to the Targaryens. What I didn't expect was to find my son marrying Daenerys. He was so different from what I remembered. He had grown so much without me. He had fought 2 wars, and won. He was a man. Maybe he never needed me. "Jorah," Viserys shouted, entering my room. "Yes, my king?" I inquired, not knowing why he was so angry. "You are my loyal subject, right?" Viserys inquired angrily. I nodded in response. "I am your majesty." "Then, if I ordered you to kill your son, should I need it? Would you do it?" Viserys inquired, grinning like a madman. "I would not. I have hurt my son enough already, but I had to play the part, and it's not like I could beat him. Something about my son, something about his glare at me yesterday made me feel a beast was hunting me. I would, your majesty." "Good, I might need it. If he keeps disrespecting his superiors, who does he think he is? Speaking like that to a king, speaking like that to a dragon." Viserys hissed in anger. Unbeknownst to them, an incredibly wise raven was listening to their conversation. HRMMM. "To inform the great cornbringer of this I have. After his mating I must, yes, the dark side of the corn I feel growing is." Back to Ronard Mormont POV. I entered my room, a couple of hours after my disgusting conversation with the entitled king wannabe piece of shit. Daenerys was currently brushing up her morning hair as I entered, her beautiful long silver hair barely covering her tits. "You didn't wake me up," Daenerys said, but the tone was more of a question than a statement. "You looked so peaceful sleeping, so I thought you deserved a good long rest." I nodded as I walked into the bathroom, feeling Daenerys looking at me from behind, her eyes drifting slowly into my ass. "So you finally found the best ass is Westeros," I chuckled as she blushed, looking away. "Hey, you can look and touch, or bite, is yours after all." "I might," Daenerys giggled, surprisingly teasing me back. "Haha," I chuckled. After having breakfast with my wife, I started to machinate the best path to the Iron Throne. With or without me, Westeros would go into war. I knew that much. King Robert would die, and soon after Ned Stark will see the fruits of his idiocy. If I started my campaign for the throne now, I would make myself the sole target, and while I was somewhat confident in myself, it would be a suicide. But if I waited for them to start their own wars, it would be easy for me to dismantle them. A broken kingdom is easier to defeat. Not to count, I also had Daenerys by my side, and she probably was the only one able to hatch my dragon eggs. As I was deep in thought, a raven flew into my lap. HRMMM. Bad news I bring. Plotting the fake dragon is HRRMMM. Take care of him, we must. YRSSSSS. Raven Yoda was back. Good thing Disney doesn't have interdimensional lawyers, so the entitled gecko is plotting. What an unexpected development. And by unexpected I mean I totally knew it would happen. Raven Yoda, Rhoda? took a step forward. HRMMM. At your call the corn order is, Cornbringer. YRSSSSS. Very well, I chuckled, and how could I not? Hey, do you think you can fly with a robe? I kinda want to dress you up with a small Yeti robe. Chapter 31, Chapter 30. I took a couple of days where I completely ignored the King of Nothing, letting him know he wasn't my first priority and that I would come to him when I decided to, and only then. I had also instructed my man should he threaten Daenerys or hit her in any way to kill him, with that bullshit about waking up the dragon. She was my wife now, and I would be damned if I let her brother or anyone for that matter hurt her. I had more important things to do anyways than to indulge the idiot, and I didn't have time to lose with his idiotic plans and ideas. I had to first take control over Essos and their forces, and only then it would be plausible to conquest Westeros. So here I was sitting while looking at a map, wondering where to start my mission. What are you doing? Daenerys asked as she approached me, looking at the map. Trying to see where is the best place to start, I answered. Where to start getting the throne back? Daenerys asked as she sat on my lap, surprising me. I didn't expect her to sit on my lap. It wasn't unwelcome, but it was unexpected. Then again, she warmed up to Khal Drogo quite fast. Not exactly, we need more men to do that, so I'm seeing where to get them, I explained to her, without telling her about my plans of conquering Essos. Conquering Essos would be considerably harder than anything I have done so far, but if I did it, conquering Westeros would be technically speaking easy. Then again, in war and love anything is possible. I might be the strongest man in the world, but that alone doesn't win wars. So you want to get more men, maybe some unsullied? Or you plan to recruit some Dothraki? Daenerys added understanding to some degree of the underlining of my plan. That's the plan, for getting that old throne back. It won't be easy, but I will certainly do it. I nodded. I see, I don't think Viserys will like it, Daenerys added unsure. He wants the throne now. I started to chuckle, until eventually, I was foolin' laughing. If he wants the throne immediately, he is more than welcome to go alone to King's Landing and slay his way to the throne. He is your king. Daenerys tried to defend his brother but was amused at my comment. If I am to kneel it will be in bed, going down on my wife. I chuckled, making a dirty joke to change the subject. Before the moment I married you I decided not to kneel anymore. I decided to stop bending for others. I am the king of the Iron and Bear Islands, and that makes you a queen. Don't forget it, because I won't. With that, I left Daenerys alone to process what I told her. After leaving Daenerys, I went to talk with Illyrio. He was the one that knew how to contact the Dothraki. It would certainly be helpful if he guided me to one of them or someone that knew their language to learn it. Son, someone behind me said, putting a hand on my shoulder, making me stop. Remove your hand out my shoulder, before I remove the hand out your body, I said with a cold tone. I cut my father off by bending his arm in a swift motion, throwing him into the wall, breaking the arm he used to touch me. Don't ever touch me again, I rather die. The feeling is repulsive. I gave him a glare that was so devoid of any good emotion all he could stare in disbelief. And by the way, if you get close to my wife, I will show you there are destinies worse than death, and that's a promise I can deliver. I couldn't stomach that man, but I also wasn't going to be the one to kill my own father, whether the man deserved for what he had done or not. As I walked towards Illyrio's solar, I heard him and the prince having a conversation. The funny thing about a super body is that every sense is enhanced. He is not doing what he promised. Viserys practically shouted, we should be marching to King's Landing. I should have my crown by now. He is trustworthy, at least my sources say so. Perhaps he is planning for your victory, my king, Illyrio offered. I don't care, he is taking too long. We'll start over with the original plan. I'll marry Daenerys to those savages and get 10,000 soldiers. We will kill that insolent fool and give his father his lands, who would then work for me, is frankly the best plan. I will get more men, and undying loyalty. I'm a genius, as expected of the future king of the Seven Kingdoms. By this point, I had managed to sneak into the room, and had managed to serve a cup of wine. Well, that's a mighty good plan, but who's going to kill me? My question made both turn their necks so fast that they almost broke them. You. I pointed at Viserys. Hardly, I don't even take my own sloppy seconds with you. How dare you? Viserys hissed. The Unsullied protecting the castle. I hummed, they at least know how to fight, but hardly a challenge. I am your king. Viserys shouted. Or maybe you plan to have Illyrio fight me, I said, turning my gaze to the trembling fat man. Don't think so, look at him, he is losing weight by just looking at me. I would never attack a guess. Illyrio offered, still trembling. Or maybe you would send my father. I chuckled, please tell me is my father. You will not. Viserys started to shout, but I dashed towards him and slapped him, putting his entitled ass on the floor. I am king. I bow to no one, I said, holding my sword to my side. Consider this the end of our alliance, not that it ever started. Out of courtesy for giving me such a wonderful wife, and with that claim to the throne, I will talk with my wife about your fate. Plotting to sell my wife like a whore and get me killed. Frankly, it's so sad and yet poetic. You will die in the same manner you originally did, for the same reason. You can't wait. At least this time he was right. I was never going to give him the crown. I grabbed Viserys by his shirt, not before knocking him down, as I dragged him across the floor, not before giving the old fat man a warning. I hope you don't try anything stupid, or you will find how terrifying I can be, Illyrio, so don't fuck with me buddy, or I'll kick your ass so hard you'll have to unbutton your collar to shit. With that done, I proceeded to get out with an unconscious on my back Viserys being dragged across the floor like a sack of shit. As I walked down the hallway to my room, while I wanted to kill Viserys, I didn't want an angry wife for the rest of my life, so I would discuss with her his punishment, but either way, he wasn't in the game any longer. Daenerys would either condemn him to his death like she did on the original timeline or ask for a lesser punishment like imprisonment. Either way, he would not see the light of day again. Illyrio POV. The eyes of that kid, he can't be human. I saw nothing but death and despair if I ever wronged him. I was a mercenary. I know of fear. I know of monsters, and yet this kid makes all my past terrors look childish. Varys, what in the name of the gods you were thinking? We can't tame this monster, I muttered, as I remembered what Varys said before he left. Perhaps only the dragon can tame this mighty bear. Varys chuckled. He never meant Viserys, no, he meant Daenerys. He plans to have that shy girl keep that monster in check. What an utterly ridiculous plan. Have you lost your touch, Varys? Chapter 32. Chapter 31. Daenerys was not exactly happy when I entered our room dragging Viserys alongside me, and it was to be expected. She had no idea what had just happened. Why is my brother in that state? Daenerys inquired, pointing at her brother on the floor with an accusatory look on her face. I sighed, trying to word out what had just happened. It wasn't easy to find the right words to basically say, your brother wanted to kill me and whore you out to a Dothraki horde to get some men. But oftentimes times is best to go with the harsh reality of the situation, that can be easily explained. I went into detail how Viserys was plotting to get me killed and have my father take my throne, and now then he would marry her to savages just to gather even more men. I can't believe he would do such a thing, Daenerys said in disbelief, eyes full of tears. I sighed as I shrugged my shoulders. You can ask Illyrio, he can fact check. Daenerys shook her head off. No, I believe you. Well, that was frankly easier than I originally thought it would. I came here so you can decide his punishment. I wanted her to be the one to select his fate. If I did it, there was a big chance she would resent me for it, but if she did, it was a totally different story. Daenerys eyed me for a second, possibly weighing the options. It was either death or imprisonment. After a few seconds where she was walking around the room trying to decide, she finally said, I know death is the most acceptable punishment, but whether he was good or not, he kept me safe all this time. I want to imprison him. While it wasn't the result I had desired from this outcome, it was still good. Nonetheless, it was a matter of time before he did something stupid and forced my sword down his neck. I'm not going to lie, I will cherish that moment with all my heart. Very well, but if he takes a wrong step, I will kill him. I nodded as I approached her, grabbing in a tight embrace by her hips. You are my wife, and whether we love each other or not, is my duty to keep you safe. Daenerys nodded in understanding, as I left the room with the sack of shit. I mean the king on my back. It took roughly 2 hours for Viserys to wake up, and his expression finding himself on one of the cells in my ship was priceless, unique, formidable. It almost made him still being alive worth it. Seriously, seeing his smug facade turned into one of total and absolute despair was a delicacy. So you finally rise, oh mighty dragon, I mocked, getting a hateful glare from him. MHHHQG. Viserys tried to say something, but his mouth was covered with homemade cloth gag, and some might wonder what a homemade cloth gag is. Well, it's a piece of used underwear from the dirtiest man under men, that was utilized for this purpose. I hope you like the flavor. Petro hasn't taken a bath or changed underwear for the last 4 months. I laughed, seeing how Viserys started to join the dots on his head, to the point he was almost throwing up. Haha, Petro laughed in the back. Don't get all fancy on me, Viserys, I chuckled. After all, your life in prison will be quite harsh and disgusting. Petro will take a bath, and that will be your drink water unless you rather drink other body fluids. Viserys' eyes widened in shock, fear rushing through his very core. I promised Daenerys I would keep you alive, I smiled, and I know torturing physically will not make her happy, but oh boy, physiological torture is quite better, once you break a man. But not physically but mentally, he can't never be mended back together again. Viserys started to try and talk again, but I cut him off. You know, I can understand the general idea of you trying to kill me. I won't let you, but heck, I can even respect you for it. I mean, it takes balls to try that knowing you will ultimately fail, but to hurt your own blood, that is simply despicable. I left, giving my men instructions to keep him alive. He, unfortunately, was loved to some degree by his sister, my wife. After leaving Viserys to suffer, I went back to Illyrio Castle, to discuss a meeting with the Dothraki, and possibly getting someone that could teach me their language. I needed to speak their tongue for my plan to work. This is one of the books I have in Dothraki culture, and more. Illyrio offered, somewhat fearful what had happened earlier. Thanks, I waved him off as I started to read. The Dothraki people are a culture of nomadic warriors in Essos who range across the vast grasslands of the Dothraki Sea in hordes known as Kalassars. People of the Seven Kingdoms and the Free Cities also refer to the Dothraki as horse lords. The Dothraki live in hordes called Kalassars. Their chieftains are called Khals, while the wife of a Khal is known as a Khaleesi. The heir of a Khal is named the Khalaka. A KO is one of the Khal's commanders within a horde. According to a semi-canon source, a cause consists of the personal guard of important individuals, such as a Khaleesi or a KO. Blood Riders fulfill the roles of guards, brothers, shadows, and friends to the Khal in ways that run deeper than the oath of the King's Guard to the king on the Iron Throne. The Khal and his Blood Riders commonly refer to each other as blood of my blood. Who would have thought they had such a complicated ruling system? For savages they have quite the operational, political system. I chuckled as I read. Unfortunately, the book didn't have anything useful their language so far, and the book had even less their migration patterns because these were pretty random, so to hunt them all down would take quite a while. I had to find an interpreter, someone that wasn't my father. I knew he knew how to speak their language, but the idea of asking him for help was repulsive of its own. So I continued reading. The Dothraki language is considered a rough, harsh language by Westerosi standards. They use descriptive names, for example, Rish Andali, meaning the land of the Undals, for Westeros, Shirak which literally means bleeding star, used to describe the red comet, or the term milkmen for the Carteen, pointing towards their paleness. Again nothing but general, and I mean very general descriptions about their culture and language. As I continued reading the book, trying to find anything useful, Daenerys entered the library with a quite provocative dress. Is late, come to bed with me. Daenerys was trying to seduce me? I mean, it's not bad. I'm her husband, but frankly, I didn't expect her to try and sleep with me after I bitch-slapped and imprison her sister. I mean brother. She was wearing a cartoon dress that I had yet to figure out where or how she acquired it, but to be honest, I didn't care. The sight was quite nice to behold. Now that you said it, I kind of feel like going to bed. I chuckled as I approached her, running my fingers through her hair down to her uncovered tit. If I didn't know any better, I would say you are trying to seduce me. Daenerys smiled as she took a step forward, kissing me quite passionately, and as our lips separated whispered, I am, my king. Well, I don't know what kind of evil and malevolent plot she's cooking, and I don't care. If these are her plots, she can sign me up for a couple of them. In the end, I will win, and we'll have a great time along the way. Chapter 33, Chapter 32 Daenerys was unexpectedly quite the passionate wife, maybe part of her dragon blood, and more often than not I found myself just getting used to this type of treatment. If I was going to hell, it would be for all the men I have killed, not for betting my wife. But I still had yet to figure out if she was trying to manipulate or not. She was genuinely sweet with me, but I had just incarcerated her brother. For me it just didn't add up. Was I being too paranoid, seeing plots where they weren't any? Maybe. Perhaps she was just trying her best to make this marriage a successful one. And yet, I had something stopping me from just trusting her, besides the fact we were strangers a month ago. I should really just let this go, I thought, as I stood of my bed making sure to leave Daenerys sleeping soundly. She tried to make it work with Drogo. I have to at least give her a chance. She was never a manipulator anyway. Now Cersei, that bitch is crazy. With a sigh I sneaked out of the room, to meet with Illyrio and have him find me a Dothraki interpreter. My first step was learning their language, then I would have to start conquering all the tribes. I had no issue with waiting and planning for the long run. The Seven Kingdoms would be there waiting for me, weaker than ever, ripe for the taking the moment I decided to go back. For now I would let those idiots play their games, because the moment I secured Essos would be the moment Westeros would be mine. Hey Illyrio, I need another thing for you. I approached the Magister with a wide smile, which by some reason startled him. Yes. Illyrio asked, cleaning his silk robe off the wine he had just spilled on himself. I need you to find me a Dothraki interpreter. I want to learn their language, I informed him. I don't know why, but I feel it's not my place to ask. Illyrio chuckled as he accepted his mission. Thanks, and you are absolutely right. Is not your place to ask. I smiled as I left the room. My destiny, the training grounds. It's been a while since I had a good workout. That doesn't involve me and my wife. Not that I complain, but I can't fuck my enemies to death. I mean, is a possibility but is certainly not efficient. The training ground, the unsullied use in a close environment. Why, I have no idea, but I don't care. I start training hard, as minutes turn into hours until I hear someone entering the training ground. Daenerys Targaryen herself descend from the comfy bed to look for me, as she rushes in to give the incredibly sweaty me a kiss. She was wearing a blue beautiful dress with gold regalia and a gold dragon crown. That was one of the gifts Illyrio gave her. You have to stop waking up without waking me up, Daenerys smiled. Sorry, but you look so adorable sleeping, I can't do that, I said as I booped her nose. Daenerys giggled as she eyed my ass for a second. You are right, I married the best ass in the known world. I laughed. My ass takes the compliment. So training? Daenerys inquired. Well, I have to occupy my free time. I scratched the back of my head as I turned my gaze to the door, feeling someone behind, while I wait for the Dothraki teacher. I signaled Daenerys to step behind me as I rushed towards the door. She immediately understood, and soon after I was kicking the door down. The other side was empty. No one but me was here. I'm going crazy. I could have sworn I felt someone staring at me a second ago. I really need to relax, or be really careful. I thought, making a mental note to order my ravens to keep an eye on everyone. If I wasn't crazy and someone managed to sneak and disappear without being caught by me, well, it was bad news. After my little incident where I felt I was being watched, I decided to send some ravens to get some of my men over Essos. I would need them for my plans. I had also ordered my Krakens to protect my islands, and some ravens waiting for the war to start to deliver the message to my family we weren't joining the Starks in their war. They insulted me first anyways. I had already done higher than enough for them and they still took a shit on my hard work. At least Ned did. If Robb couldn't beat his last remaining death flag, the phrase, and avoid his fate, then frankly he was destined to die. My only duty was my promise to Sansa. I might not be able to marry her anymore, but I promise I would always keep her safe regardless of our relationship, and that I intend to keep. I already had a deal with Varys, and he was one to keep his word. But that brought me back. If the phrase betrayed the Starks again, Sansa would either die or worse end up marrying the old disgusting freak. So in the end I might as well kill the phrase. No, why would I? The Starks need to fucking do something for themselves, so instead I'll warn them, a raven here and there, and soon enough their heads will roll. If that didn't ensure her safety, well, I would have to unfortunately get more involved. Either way I would keep my promise. I also wanted to protect Arya, but not because I promise anyone. That one was more of a personal goal. I liked the little rascal. She was a free spirit that didn't deserve all the shit she got, and while she ended up being badass, there were other ways to do so without getting all those emotional scars. Noticing it was getting late, I started to walk back to my room, wondering how would this war end. Victory was never 100% secured. I was pretty confident I would win anyways, but what clouded my mind was, how many would die for me to get the crown on my head? Shaking the thoughts off my head, I entered the room, and what I saw surprised me, one of those good surprises. Daenerys was sitting on the bed with a very sexy dragon-inspired bedroom clothing. "I've been waiting for you," Daenerys said, crawling to me. "My king. She is getting good in the art of seduction, that much is sure. Well, let's not wait anymore." I smiled as I eagerly dived into the bed. That night I had a dream, a really vivid dream. It was so realistic it made me feel it was real. I woke up inside a tent. Inside there were some Dothraki chanting something. Plysif Cub, 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 Plysif Cub. What were they chanting? They were happy. I was happy. Why was I happy? I started to look around, trying to make sense of the situation, trying to understand what was going on, but a voice I had grown to recognize the last few weeks caught my attention. Daenerys was in my dream, covered in blood, but no hers. She was eating something, the heart of a horse. The fuck does this mean? And why does this dream make me happy? This shit makes little to no sense, I murmured in my dream as a white fog covered everything, leaving me with nothing but questions. Chapter 34. Chapter 33. It took Illyrio roughly a couple weeks to find a good Dothraki teacher willing to teach us. They were pretty rare. But once he found the teacher, I found the Dothraki language was quite dull and limited in its uses, with a very short vocabulary, making the classes go smooth and fast, but even though there were still some concepts hard to grasp. But I suppose I was a bit distracted with the bizarre dream I had a couple of weeks ago, and was focusing mostly during these classes to make sense to the chant I heard. Plysif Cub? Those words echoed in my head like a butterfly in a cage. Daenerys on the other hand was doing a bit better than me, absorbing the language like she was born for it. She was quite excited to learn this with me, and I didn't see any problems with her joining my classes. In fact, it was mostly beneficial for me and her, so I happily paid the teacher extra to teach both us. Their culture is so fascinating. Daenerys was happy to expand her knowledge, and eager to learn new things. This frankly made her pretty adorable at times. "Can you translate something for me?" I asked the teacher, who turned his gaze to meet mine. "What do you want to translate?" the teacher inquired, accepting my request. If I knew how to write it, it would be easier to ask him what I want, but because I didn't know how to do it, I imitated the sound. Plysif Cub. I think that was it. Well, that can only mean bear cub, but why would you want me to translate that? The teacher asked, as I started to analyze the dream I had. My head was probably playing games with me, using the fact I've been sleeping with Daenerys every day and that I want to conquer the Dothraki to create that very specific dream. Or at least that would make sense if it wasn't for the fact I didn't know any Dothraki words before that dream, and thanks to my teacher I confirmed those words meant something, so perhaps it was more than a simple dream. I couldn't help but look at my wife, my eyes slowly drifting her flat stomach. Was she pregnant? She wasn't drinking anything to stop or prevent a pregnancy, so it wouldn't surprise me if she announced that she was with a child any time now. I don't know how it hasn't occurred to me that I might be a father soon, how that fact didn't dawn on me sooner. "We will soon," Daenerys smiled, noticing that I was looking at her belly. That would be great. I was lost on what to say, so I decided to say something positive, nod and continue with the class. After the Dothraki class I went on with my daily routine, training, and stuff. I still didn't have the manpower to move, so all I could do was gather information. As I trained, a maid entered with a cup of water, but some time was off about her. Her aura, her general vibe was immensely more dangerous than any other maids working in the castle. "Who are you?" I inquired, as I dropped the cup of whatever she tried to poison me with. "What do you mean, Master Mormont?" the maid said with slight fear, but something inside me told me it was fake. "You either tell me who you are, and I will personally introduce you to my sword, and believe me, your relationship will be intimate." I smiled as I grabbed my sword. A man is impressed. A man was right all along. All of a sudden the voice of the so-called maid changed. "You are a faceless man," I muttered. A man would be correct. The maid/faceless man nodded. A man wanted to see the Blessed One, and a man was right to do so. "So who paid you enough money to kill yourself?" I inquired as I approached him. "'Cause you must know, this is a suicide. You can't win against me. A man will not and have not taken any contracts against you, but others can use a man to hurt you otherwise," the faceless maid answered. He basically said, he would not accept contracts with my name on the list, but others I care about they would. Daenerys, Sansa, my family, or my future sons and daughters. You are basically begging for your religion to go extinct, I growled. A man would expect nothing else. Valor Morghulis, Valor Dohaeris, all men must die, all men must serve, a man is done here, the faceless man said as he removed his face changing into another one. He came to warn me others would target my loved ones, and what did he meant by blessed one I thought as I watched him leave. After that ominous chat with the assassin I decided to step up my security even more. I ordered 50 ravens to be on high alert around the castle, with Rhoda leading this. Yes, I named the raven that behaves like Yoda, Rhoda. HRMM protect you, I will. YRSSS Rhoda took the assignment with great honor. Thanks, I'm counting on you, I chuckled. After setting an ever tighter security I went to talk to Illyrio about the accommodations for the 5,000 men that were arriving in a week. Once they arrived I would start my campaign to take over the Dothraki. But I needed food, supplies, and other things before we left this place. One of the reasons Illyrio would come quite handy, supplying us with all that and more for an affordable price. Magister, I announced my presence as I entered his office. King Mormont, what an unexpected surprise, Illyrio had learned to call me king, was it out of fear or respect I didn't really care. I started to explain to him in detail what I wanted, weapons, food, making a very detailed list of supplies he would have to provide before we left his castle. Is that all? Illyrio inquired going over the list. Yes, I hope you continue to be our supplier, I smiled leaving an unspoken threat in the air, betray me and I will get you. Then I will get to it, Illyrio nodded, not daring to look me in the eyes. With that done it was time to sleep. I had a wife to see and do married things with. After another passionate marital night with my wife, I fell asleep soundly in a matter of minutes, but again instead of darkness, a quite vivid dream awaited me. Snow, lots and lots of snow, covering every single corner in my dream world. I felt cold anyways, my body seemed to accept this dream, or possibly vision as a reality. Where am I now? This doesn't seem like the north, maybe beyond the wall. I thought as I walked aimlessly trying to find something to make sense of what I was seeing. I don't know for how long I walked inside my dream, but it felt like hours, and all I could see and feel was cold, and a sense of dread filling me, fear. I haven't felt that in a while, not like this, and to feel it in a dream is idiotic, but when I dreamed of Daenerys that time, I was happy. And that fact made this even more serious. What if this was a dream? No, if this was vision warning me of the White Walkers. I was prepared for them. I have been hoarding dragon glass for a while, and I can pretty sure take on the Night King alone, so what is the weird vision trying to warn me about? My thoughts are halted when an undead dire wolf appears, looking at me. Is this a vision warning about Jon, and how he will die? Not that I hate the guy, but why would that even affect me? I thought as I observed the wolf in detail. But there it stood doing nothing, but looking at me. There must be something relevant to me here, but what? I thought, but before I could think on that further a loud noise behind me caught my attention. I immediately turned around to see the source of the sound, finding something I didn't expect to find. An army of undead White Walkers with a dragon that wasn't any of the ones I knew or had. It was massive, around the same size the dragon originally named Drogo would be, and on top of it mounting it there was someone smiling at me. I wanted to get a better look, to see who was that person mounting the dragon. It wasn't the Night King, it was someone new, but before I could get my answer something pulled me back to the real world. Wake up. Daenerys was shaking me, with concern. I'm up, what happened? I inquired mildly, annoyed that I didn't get to see who was mounting the dragon. You were sweating, and shaking. I got scared. Daenerys breathed out. It took me a second to see that I was indeed soaked in sweat. I had probably scared the ever-living crap of her. I'm okay, it was just a bad dream I had. I soothed her, as I hugged her. Chapter 35, Chapter 34. It didn't matter what I tried, the dream, no, the nightmare I had haunted me, not only with fear but doubts. Why did I dream that? What was the message? And who was that man riding that dragon? And how the hell did they find a dragon to begin with? The image of that man, the dragon, and the army, it was vivid in my head. Every time I closed my eyes, or stopped thinking, I would without even noticing make my mind drift into what I saw. Perhaps I had been underestimating an army that only grows every battle. No, I didn't underestimate them. I have been using the knowledge I have of this universe to prepare to win on the long night. But all this time, I had been neglecting something that might as well put my life on the line if I keep ignoring it. It has been said that something as small as the flutter of a butterfly's wing can ultimately cause a typhoon halfway around the world. Every action we take creates an echo. I was the flutter. By all I know my sole existence fucked the world. I brought changes into this world, and one of them might be what I saw. I possibly created a chain of events that ultimately made my life harder. I need to prepare even harder for the long night. That feeling of dread and fear I felt weren't normal. I might not like to admit it, but I was scared. But that's good. Fear motivates us to grow stronger, to prepare ourselves better to face what is to come. That I will do. I might be afraid, but I will fight. Our men will arrive tomorrow, right? Daenerys inquired, sitting beside me. Yes, so far that the information I have. I nodded. For now, I had to put those dreams aside, whether they were a warning or not. I still needed the crown to have a chance to stop the long night from ever occurring. One more step to take what is ours, Daenerys said, filled with determination. She had no doubts in her mind we would take the crown. I chuckled. I will put that crown on your head before I burn the throne and crown and forge a new pair, for us. Daenerys smiled satisfied with my answer as she leaned in kissing me, a throne worthy of their new king and queen, their rightful ones. Yes, I nodded, kissing her back. Let's go to our last class. Daenerys kissed me once again as she guided me to our teacher. I had continued with my classes, learning Dothraki every day more and more, and by this point, I could understand fluently everything, and hold conversations in their language. I had an accent, but it was to be expected. Daenerys was doing a lot better than me in the accent department, though I was ahead on the writing part. After the final class, our teacher left, leaving us with the reminder to study the little we still had to learn by ourselves. We finally know how to speak their language, Daenerys said, clearly proud of herself. Now it's just a question of waiting for our men. I nodded. Soon our conquest would start, and every victory would be a step closer to the Iron Throne. The first ones to come into the fold would be the Dothraki. I would start conquering the free cities, one by one, ensuring that the entirety of Essos is under my banner. Once all the free cities were under my banner, I would move to conquer the Second Sons, with that Essos would be mine. But my plan to conquer didn't end there. Unlike my wife, I wanted all Essos, including Bravus, and I would have it, Bravus, their army, and the Iron Bank with all its gold. After that, well, whatever that was left of Westeros would be mine, though there were a few things I wanted to do before leaving Essos. For one, I wanted to investigate the ruins of Valyria and see what can I salvage, and also try to find more dragon eggs there. Valyria, the broken empire, I muttered as I opened the book I got from Valyria in Illyrio's library. Valyria, also called Old Valyria, is a ruined city in Essos. It is a long-dead city of wonderment and was once the capital of a great empire called the Valyrian Freehold. It was destroyed by a cataclysmic event known as the Doom of Valyria. It is the ancestral home of House Targaryen, House Celtigar, and House Velaryon. I only recognized House Targaryen. I continued reading about how House Targaryen was the smallest house of the three, and how the other two houses fucked their own empire in a struggle for power. But what interested me was that the book said that it is rumored that Valyria holds many treasures of its past glory there. That meant Valyrian blades and maybe more. And to be honest, I would be happy if I found the recipe, the trick in how to make Valyrian steel. I knew you needed a dragon, but besides that, the method was unknown. But all books agreed on one thing: you needed dragons and magic to make said metal. But besides going to Valyria and conquering Essos, there wasn't much I wanted to do in this part of the world. For now, it's late, come to bed with me. Daenerys' sleepy voice called me out, begging to be cuddled, and frankly, I was tired, so I didn't see any reasons to say no. I could always read more tomorrow. Fine, I shall warm you to oblivion, wife. I chuckled as I got inside the blankets, moving close to her. I am a dragon, you are the one that will get burned, Daenerys said teasingly. I don't mind that type of burn, I smirked at her, as we both started to chat, and slowly but surely drifted into sleep. I woke up the next morning to my wife kissing me, with a smug look on her face, as if she had won something. What's up with that face? I yawned, stretching my body still under the comfy and warm blankets. You didn't wake up without me. Daenerys smiled adorably, biting her lower lip, as she added, it seems you are finally getting comfortable in bed with me. So that was her victory call, that I overslept today. Frankly, I couldn't understand what part of that could possibly make me a better husband or make her happy, but if it makes her happy, who was I to judge? I see. Well, if me waking up with you makes you so happy, then it shall be done. Frankly, I didn't wake her up to let her sleep more, but if she wanted to wake up with me, then she was more than welcomed. Daenerys smiled as she got on top of me, resting her naked breast on my bare chest. I never understood why girls liked teddy bears until I got my own. Ha ha ha, that has to be the less sexy name I could possibly be called. I laughed. After all, there wasn't anything sexy about a stuffed animal. Mine is custom made, Daenerys whispered to my ear. It came with a few extra parts. I can't believe you were shy a few months ago. Frankly, you had me fooled. I laughed as I kissed her. Well, it's your fault, my king. You made me a queen, and a queen can't be shy. Daenerys kissed me as she dragged her hand through my chest to my manhood. A queen knows what she wants and gets it. Then claim your bounty, my queen. Claim this bear as your own once again. I kissed her. Our men could wait a couple of hours for us. Who was I to deny a dragon from her conquest? I was but a mere bear riding a dragon. Chapter 36. Chapter 35. My men had arrived, though for reasons they didn't have to know nor I wanted to share. They had to wait on the coast for hours. But after my shenanigans with my wife, I went down to greet my men, Daenerys by side. So this is our fleet? Daenerys inquired, head high, full of regal air. She was so different to other and yet so warm with me. It is my queen. I smiled as I pulled her close to me by her waist. Do you like it? Daenerys giggled as she nodded. I do, but I think I like the man leading it more. What a lucky man that must be, to be loved by a queen. I grinned, giving her a quick and sweet peck in the lips. He is quite lucky, indeed, Daenerys teased. Frankly, she made me forget at times what world I was in. It was hard not to get lost in those purple mystifying eyes. Well, while I would love to kiss you all day, my queen, we have some matters to attend to. I kissed her one last time as I added, shall we? Unfortunately, you are right, let's. Daenerys nodded. We approached the ships, as we were greeted by one of the lords, who bowed to us, which was in itself weird. I still had yet to declare myself king of the Seven Kingdoms. Your Majesties, the Lord bowed. Seeing my look of befuddlement, the Lord elaborated, you married a Targaryen. We might be dumb, but we ain't that dumb. I didn't know if I should be surprised or something else, but he was right nonetheless. I decided to end this wheel before my marriage. My beautiful wife just makes my conquest even more important, for her enemies are mine. With that the Lord turned to Daenerys, my queen. We first bowed to dragons and more recently to the bears. We are honored to serve you both. The Lord bowed once again. Daenerys smiled, satisfied with his words. Very well. I took a step forward as I asked, how is the south? Last thing we heard before leaving was that Robert Baratheon broke your betrothal to Sansa Stark and that Lord Stark was appointed as the new hand of the king, and was going south with him, the Lord answered, which gave me a rough idea timeline-wise where we were. Daenerys shifted uncomfortably at the mention of Sansa, which reminded me, I had yet to talk with her about that, it just never came up that I was engaged. Very well, make sure all men are well rested, tomorrow we begin, I ordered him, as I took my wife by the hand softly to a more private area. Once we were alone, I sighed and said, ask whatever you want. Daenerys eyed me carefully before she asked, with a hint of worry on her voice, do you love her? Heavens, no, she is a sweet and innocent girl, but I don't love her. All I feel for her is some kind of brotherly love, if you must put a name to it, I answered, and because of that brotherly bond that I alone form with her is that I want to protect her. Daenerys relaxed with a hint of happiness by my answer as she asked, but she loves you. I think she does, or at least is in love with the idea of the knight in shining armor I projected. I shrugged playfully, she might hate me for all I know when she hears I marry you. Good let her, only I get to mount this teddy bear, and if I must be hated for it, so be it. Daenerys laughed, as she gave me a passionate kiss. You don't hear me complaining, I smiled, reciprocating the kiss. After greeting my men at the coast, I went to Illyrio to make sure everything I asked him was in order, weapons, food, medicine, and guides to help us understand and find our way in this land. Magister, is everything in order? I inquired, entering his office. I have found everything you asked for, from food and maps, to guides and weapons, Illyrio nodded, giving a detailed list, including the prices for each thing. Good, everything seems to be in order, I said as I check every item on the list, I will get you the payment soon. Very well, anything else your majesty? Illyrio inquired. Nothing for now, that'll be all for now. The time to conquer Essos had finally come. I had the men, the resources, and a general idea on how to proceed. Let the fucking game finally begin. After leaving my men to rest, the Unsullied working for Illyrio to take care that the stuff I bought got to their hands, I decided to go to sleep early. This might be the last good night of sleep I would probably have in quite a while. I suppose in a way it was my honeymoon with Daenerys, because after today, things would start shaking, war like I never seen or experienced before would begin. But for today I would enjoy my last free day with my wife, and with that in mind, I entered the room that has been our room since we married. I've been waiting for you, Daenerys smiled as she approached me, putting her arms around my neck and legs around my waist as she kissed me. Tomorrow our destiny awaits, my king. It does my queen, I chuckled, as I kissed her back. I wanted to talk to you about something, Daenerys said with a somewhat serious tone as if she had done something wrong. That never ends well, but go on. I eyed her with curiosity. I don't think there was something besides trying to kill me that would make me angry with her. Is about your father, Daenerys said. Well, maybe I was too hasty to say she can't get me angry, but I wasn't angry at her, I was angry at the soon-to-be dead man that ignored my threat. I grabbed my sword and started to leave. I'll be back, I have an old bear to kill. Wait, hear me out first, Daenerys said, with eyes that said if what I have to say doesn't convince you, you are free to kill him. Very well, I sighed, pushing the huge need to bash my father's skull against the floor. I know what he did, he told me so, how he abandoned you, and left you with a broken house, Daenerys said as she grabbed my hands. I know the sins he committed trying to please that vile woman, instead of thinking of his family, I know all of that. Then you know why I want to kill him, I inquired, curious as to where she was going with this. Let him pay for his sins in blood, let him pay what he owes us by fighting for us, Daenerys said with a cold tone. He wronged you, let him pay with steel all he did, so that his miserable life amounts to something in our name. Frankly, I was both incredibly aroused and somewhat intrigued. I did not expect her to offer such a deal. So in other words, we let him serve, so if he dies is by helping us, I said, summarizing what she said. Daenerys smiled. Yes, he will pay for your suffering with blood, or with fire, but he will pay. All right, I don't see anything wrong with that. I nodded as I scooped her over with one hand. Now how about we make this night a memorable one? Don't we do that every night? Daenerys giggled. Is it so bad that I want every night to be memorable? I smirked. Chapter 37, Chapter 36. The next morning, I woke up early to the dawning rising sun, and my first thing on my to-do list was to start coordinating the logistics of what we were going to do once we were outside of Pentos. I had already ordered my ravens previously to spread out and look all over Essos. Their mission was simple: to find as many Dothraki tribes as possible. The bigger the Khalasar, the better. Once they located some, they would have to come back to me giving me their general location. That way, I would find them, giving me the element of surprise and time to plan how to subdue them. So far, I had the location of 3 small Khalasars, with each one having around 1,000 to 3,000 riders or able warriors. While I wanted to know where the biggest Kalasar were and absorb them, I would target the small Kalasars first, because while my plan of using their horses might work, it might also backfire me terribly. If the awful case scenario they for some reason believed I was using some kind of black sorcery, things would go bad, especially if I was outnumbered. I was a super soldier, not a god. It would be stupid to target Kells like Drogo at first, he would obliterate me in sheer numbers. That's why I wanted to target smaller Kalasars, because if my plan went wrong, I would have enough manpower to subdue them. Today is the day, Daenerys smiled, snapping me out of my long reverie, standing right beside me. I nodded, as I walked to the coast with my wife and some of our men guarding us. My men had rested and were ready to march. Illyrio had provided them with all the items I had ordered for this specific campaign. We are ready, my king, the commander of my men announced. Good, I acknowledged, as we started to move out of Pentos. After making sure everything was ready, we left Pentos, following the directions one of my ravens gave me to the smallest Kalasar they had found so far. This would be the perfect target to test run and see if I could do like I did with the Ironborn and make them believe I was some kind of chosen one. If that didn't work, I would have to resort to plan B, either kill the Khal and claim the Kalasar, which I wasn't entirely sure it would work considering there was nothing in the books I read about them that said or even hinted that foreigners could be named Khal of a Kalasar. And if B didn't work, I would have to go down to sea, kill everyone in the Kalasar. It would take us roughly 4 days before we even arrived close to the small Kalasar. That was if we didn't stop, and while I was eager to see if I could use the Dothraki for my conquest, I was not going to make my men suffer for it, so we would rest after a day or two. I knew I could win from what my ravens had found out. They had about 1,000 able soldiers or riders. 3 days later. The terrain was beautiful yet unforgiving, both majestic and terrifying. The plains were covered in gold-colored grass, with animals roaming free, both predators and prey. So far it has been 3 days since we left Pentos, and so far we haven't found any type of problems in our path, besides the scorching sun and the harsh climate. But all our effort was about to pay off because we are finally close to the Kalasar I had targeted. My ravens had informed me that the Kalasar had set up a camp a few miles away from us, which meant it was time to prepare for what it was to come. The first thing I did was to instruct some of my men to set up camp and protect Daenerys should things go wild. Not that they were, but it's always good to have a backup plan just in case. While they did that, I discussed with my general and lieutenant in the war tent how to proceed. I wanted their inputs, because who knows, they might have a good idea. One my lieutenants had the idea to simply go and talk to them with basically what I call a white flag, but Dothraki didn't have white flag culture, which meant approaching them with non-hostile intentions was not only stupid and suicidal if I were to go alone, but it would also end with me fighting the horde alone, which didn't appeal to me at all. From what I read, they even attacked other Kalasars, showing no mercy whatsoever, so if they did that with their own people, which they shared culture and blood, it would be pretty safe to assume they will try to destroy me as soon as they notice my presence. My general had the great idea of just show them my strength as I did with them, but I wanted to keep the casualties to a minimum, so I discarded that idea for now. But in the end, regardless of the how, I still had to approach them some way. For any of my plans to work, I needed to be relatively close to their horses for my power to work. It also didn't help that none of my men knew about my powers, something I pretended to keep in the shadows until I had the Iron Throne, or at the very least all Essos is my hands, so with them making suggestions without having useful knowledge about how I could approach the situation, technically made our discussion mostly useless. After a couple of hours discussing mostly about useless ideas, while the camp was being set, I finally decided what to do. While not what I originally wanted, I would have to face them head-on, and once I was within striking distance, I would focus on recruiting their horse to my cause. This plan, of course, meant I would have to kill some of them, but there wasn't any other way, at least that was aware of. Well, that's it for today. Tomorrow we march, I said as I left the tent, to see what my wife was doing. I entered my tent, finding Daenerys having a one-sided conversation with the ravens that took to their heart brooding the eggs. You guys know these aren't raven eggs. Daenerys giggled. Asterisk, how dare you? They will be more raven than you will ever be. Caw. Asterisk, one raven cawed angrily, feeling insulted. Caw, she is lucky that she mates with the Cornbringer, or else she could get the caw combo, another raven added. Ha ha ha, I laughed seeing the interaction. What made this even funnier was that Daenerys didn't understand shit what they were saying, which made this a joke only I would understand. What's so funny? Daenerys inquired with an amused expression. Well, for one, the raven brooding the eggs are dissing you, while, of course, you have no idea, but thanks to my powers, I can understand them. Nothing, I said, failing to contain my laughter completely. It was me talking with the ravens, wasn't it? Daenerys pouted adorably. It's part of it, I nodded, kissing her. So any updates, my king? Daenerys inquired. Well, if you wish to know, my queen, I started to explain in detail what we were going to do tomorrow, little by little, each detail, before we both fell asleep. I woke up the next morning earlier than usual. I was to get ready for the upcoming fight. My scouts aka my ravens had told me that the Kalasar knew of our presence, so I had to prepare. Fast, I wasn't nervous, not much anyway. I had fought worse battles so far, but for some reason having someone to go back to, someone I think I might end up falling like an idiot in love with if I haven't already, made my heart beat with doubts. Maybe this is why Cersei said love was a weakness. I kissed Daenerys with a long passionate kiss before I rode off with my men. This was my first battle for the Iron Throne. It didn't take us long to find the Khalasar. They were a few miles away, but I could see the Khalasar getting closer and closer, their battle screams thundering the empty plains. Well, remember my words, men. I shouted as I charged, hearing my man shout, my house ancestral words. Here we stand. Chapter 38, Chapter 37. The battle began soon after my battle cry, with me galloping quickly through the enemy lines, cutting down as many Dothraki as I could before they could react, using my shield to block the arrows coming at me. This was hard because I had to focus on two things, one fighting, which was easy by now, and two making a connection with the horses around me, and connecting with animals while doing something else was difficult. The difficult part was that I had to focus and I had to do it. That wasn't Exalt's easy while I hacked and chopped through the Dothraki lines, but I had to make a connection with their horses, and one by one I started to succeed in doing so, just to find something troubling in my plan, something I haven't considered before. And to be honest, I should have had, because so far every animal I had bonded with, I had done it in a controlled environment. I never tried to control an animal in a panic state, while in battle, and while these horses were indeed hearing my voice, they were in a state where they couldn't understand my commands, and by the moment my commands managed to reach them out, it would be already too late. So in the end, there was no other choice. I would have to kill the Khal, and force the remaining warriors in the Khalasar to submission. Locating the Khal was easier than I thought and expected, because in their culture, the Khal looks for the leader, in this case me, and tries to kill him to prove his superiority and strength to others. He would do the exact same thing with other Khals. And like a do Bill, he appeared, the Khal, of this small Khalasar, riding valiantly towards me in the heat of battle. Not wanting to let the poor Khal wait, I dashed forward, charging at him, while cutting several riders as they got on my way, until we were a few feet apart, and like a thunder our swords clashed together. He tried to cut me, but I smiled as I jumped in the air, decapitating his horse in a single swing. Submit or die, I said in Dothraki. We ride for battle, we die in it. The Khal spat as he rushed towards me with his curved blade. With a sigh, I blocked his first blow with my shield, and dodged the second by taking a step to the side. I continued to dodge as I felt very well how the battle would end. I could see it clear as the day. He was going to die. It was time to end this fight. As the Khal brought down his curved blade, I took a step forward, bashing his arm down with my shield with enough force to break his arm. Before he could regain his composure, I took another step forward, cutting his head. As his head fell into the ground with a heavy thud, bouncing like a rock, the screams of anger of the Khal blood riders shook the very ground. They were ready to die, as it was their duty as the blood brothers of the Khal to try and avenge him. The two blood guards, or blood brothers, rushed to me, swinging their blades wildly. I simply decided to dodge the first set of attacks, before delivering a cut on their stomach with a single swing. The cut was deep enough to make part of their organs spill out, covering the grass with the red scarlet color of war. Submit or die, I shouted in Dothraki with all mighty. The Khalasar stopped cold for a moment. The previously violent Khalasar stood quiet for a second before they dropped their blades. They might be savages, but they can recognize total and absolute defeat. With the heat of battle finally dying out and the horses calming down, I would be able to finally try my original plan. I waited for a second as I made sure to connect with all the horses around. Join me, and I will join all the Khalasar under me, the stallion that will mount the world. Mentally I could only send really basic commands like one-word commands. That's something I learned a long time ago, but lucky for me all I needed was one word. Kneel. The horses one by one started to kneel, doing it the best they could. Murmurs could be heard among the Dothraki warriors. Who wants to join my herd? So we might ride the world together. I shouted in Dothraki once again, and soon the Dothraki followed their horses' example, as they chanted in approval. I had lost some men, and some Dothraki along the way, but I had confirmed that it was possible to absorb these warriors into my ranks. After the battle I organized a meeting with the Dothraki general. The bigger the Khalasar, the more generals the Khal has. This Khalasar only had one. But one was all I needed. I had after all some questions to ask him about their culture, especially if they had any holidays where they would reunite in their city. If I had all the Khals in one place, without war and blood, I would be able to connect to their horses and possibly absorb all their forces. Unfortunately the general said they don't have holidays and there had never been all the Khalasars in the city, but that the city is ready should that come to happen. He did share valuable information that the books about them didn't have, apart from the obvious that the Dothraki follow the strong, but to be considered strong you need to kill the Khal ruling the Khalasar. Only then the Khalasar would accept you. Something I already knew, but then he started sharing things I didn't know, that while they didn't care what race was their leader as long he was strong, they did care about their Khal representing their culture to a degree. For example, they thought because of my armor and horses that I was going to sell them as slaves should I win. He said that if I had at least painted my horses they would have surrendered after their Khal died without waiting for my shout, but because I didn't show any inclination towards their culture or ways they just assume I was there to hunt them or slave them. So with that in mind, I had one thing to do, paint my horses. That of course was a null point now that I had Dothraki riders, which would very well represent their culture while fighting. Go and keep the Dothraki in line, no killing or raping, I ordered in Dothraki as I left to see the injured. Yes, Khal the general left without questioning my authority or even hesitating. He didn't seem to care that I killed hundreds of them today. We had lost 200 men, while the Dothraki had lost almost 350. The battle was fast and swift, but ultimately had great losses. And yet he was nothing but obedient. Their culture is so confusing yet beneficial for me. Shaking the thoughts off my head, as I walked into the medical area, my eyes were immediately drawn to my father on a bed, with a deep cut on his chest. I couldn't help but chuckle dryly, because like Daenerys said, he was paying his betrayal in blood. He rode with me into battle without me even knowing, and almost died. Ignoring him for a second, I started to see how many men we had in the medical camp, and by I could count around 200 men, counting the recently added Dothraki. We will need a week before the majority of these men are able to move again, one of the doctors I had hired in Pentos said. Very well, I nodded. I'll give you 10 days, but if you need more let me know. Now it was time to see how my wife was doing, and then take a long bath. Did you get hurt? Daenerys asked as she entered the medical area with a worried look. No, I was just checking those that did, I answered, disarming the situation. I'm glad. Daenerys ran towards me, giving me a tight hug once she was standing close to me. I thought for a moment you would leave me. I can't be killed, you got one unkillable husband. I soothed her worried mind. Later that night, after taking a long bath with Daenerys and messing around with her for a bit, I dozed off into the realm of slumber. I had of course worked out quite a bit today with the battle and the sex, so I needed to rest, but as soon as I closed my eyes, it was if I opened them inside the nightmare I had some time ago again. Snow everywhere, covering every inch in the area, the blizzard freezing my very core. This is odd, last time I didn't feel this cold, I muttered as I tried to see what this vision wanted to show me. You said you can't be killed, care to prove that. A voice colder than the winter itself and as unforgiving as hell said behind me, sending an involuntary shiver down my spine as I spun around like a startled cat. This time the man wasn't mounting the dragon and he was closer to me on a horse. He was still smiling, taunting me. I wanted to see who he was, but the howling blizzard made it impossible to see anything else but the massive dragon behind him. I can't wait to extinguish the life out of you. Chapter 39, Chapter 38. His vision was out place. What was going on? Perhaps I should just ignore it until my body decides to wake up, for now. But my train of thought is stopped short because the blurred smiling figure started to approach me. Not really knowing if I could fight a vision, I ran to the house that is always here in my visions while taking the opportunity to see if I could recognize the new White Walker. But it doesn't matter how much the undead atrocity approaches me, I can't see anything but his silhouette and smile slowly moving towards me. Once inside the house I tried to pull my sword, getting ready to fight should the undead beast entered the house, for this might be a dream, but I wasn't going to go down even in the dream realm without a fight. But before I can even grasp my blade, a nightmarish creature is rising on its haunches, stops me, holding my arms tight with a bind of shadows. I get a glimpse of the creature that seemed to be made out entirely out of shadows with a bizarre collection of sharp claws and teeth. The creature pressed his clawed shadowy hands down on my shoulder, piercing my skin down to the bone. Caught you, a voice thundered inside my skull, seeming to come from everywhere around me, the voice being exactly the same I heard a few seconds ago. I tried to make a run for it, but I held tight in place by the shadow. Champion of Light, the shadow demon chuckled in amusement. Oh, what fun we shall have. Glazing back I can see that the shadow creature bends down ponderously. By what I can see it must be at least twice my height, and with enough strength to hold me down. I also had to consider this was a dream, and I might not have my powers here. Eventually I feel the demon's breath on my neck, as his other hand snakes its way down my back, drawing blood, as he pushes with the claw on my shoulder my entire body down. Slowly but surely I find myself being pushed closer and closer to the ground. Tired of this one-sided domination conquest, I drop fast on the ground, taking his claw out of my shoulder, as I rolled out of his grasp. Can you beat my champion? I wonder. Who will win, light or darkness? Good or evil? Life or death? The shadow demon chuckled in amusement as he continued to grow in size, non-stop swallowing the world around him, as he faded into the nothingness. I can wait to tear you apart. Over and over and over again, so don't disappoint me. Fear, yes. This was the first time I actually felt fear since I got here. It's been so long since I got this chilling sensation running through my body. The last time I felt this was when I was dying. In this life I never had a real challenge. I knew I could beat anyone that tried to kill me. After all, I got powers when I reincarnated. But this thing made me feel powerless. This thing made me feel human once again. I woke up to quiet and warmth. Groaning, I blinked away the lingering haze of sleep as I groggily sit up on the bed, stretching my sore body. My tent is open, revealing a sunny day. Noon, by the looks of it. A glance around reveals that I'm indeed back in my room that somehow had been converted into something alike to the medical area at my camp. Taking off the covers I see that I was half naked in my bed with my shoulder and torso being covered in bandages. A realization hits me. The demon managed to hurt me through the visions. There was no other explanation. I could feel my shoulder somewhat numb, same with my torso. With a sigh, I get up and find my clothes, folded neatly on a night table that if I had to guess was my wife doing. It doesn't take me long to dress up. I can hear my men talking, murmuring. Probably about me, but I can't really tell. I make my way down the camp as my men stare at me with disbelief. Whatever they were told was serious. Perhaps some thought I was going to die. Deciding I really don't care about what they are thinking right now, I continue to focus my ears on finding my wife. *Cornbringer, you are awake. We never doubted you. Asterisk, a raven flew towards me, practically tackling me, giving the equivalent of a hug for a raven. I'm not going down that easy, buddy, I chuckled, petting the little rascal as I asked, where is my wife? Asterisk, caw, she's on the medical area, discussing with the doctors about your situation. The raven happily informed, as he flew over my head, sitting on it. I will stay here and keep you safe, I swear it, caw, for my honor. I smiled at his antics as I walked down the medical area, ignoring the ravens and everyone. For now, all I wanted to see was my wife. I walked down my camp until the medical tents were on my sight. We can't save him. I'm sorry, my queen. I could hear the voice of what I assumed was one of the doctors. He is still breathing. You must save him. Daenerys shouted angrily. She was desperate. It would be mercy to kill him. Whatever got into his system is worse than any poison known to men, the doctor added, as I entered the tent. Good thing my wife stopped you, idiots, from killing me, I growled. Frankly, I was mad. I could have died if she didn't stop them. Ronard. Daenerys turned around fast like lightning, running towards me while crying. Once she was close enough, she jumped into my arm, hanging tightly from my neck. I knew you would come back, she said, each word followed by a kiss. I blink in realization, just how long I was out. How long was I out? Almost 2 weeks, Daenerys smiled, with tears running down her eyes. The doctors kept saying since day one that it would be a mercy to kill you, but I knew you would come back. You promised me you would never die. A promise that now sounds like a real challenge to keep, but I wasn't just ready to give up on that promise. Am I glad? Someone actually believed I would come back. I smiled as I glared at the speechless doctor. Not only me, but your ravens also stood outside the tent. They would get mad every time the doctors talked about your death. Daenerys chuckled. I swear, sometimes I feel they understand me. They were the only ones with me on this. My loyal feather gang, or raven squad, that would get some extra corn later for their loyalty. You would be surprised how much they understand. I chuckled as I pointed to the raven in my head she had failed to notice. Asterisk, cave, what are these humans looking at? Asterisk, the raven requested, turning his little head in confusion. I shrugged as I left the tent with my wife, seriously considering killing the doctors for almost killing me. Chapter 40. Chapter 39. It has been 1 day since I woke up almost death, injured in bed. Today I was on my tent talking with my wife. Daenerys insisted that I had to rest 1 or 2 days more before moving, so here I was finishing off my breakfast in bed as I collected my thoughts. Though my mind is still a bit fuzzy after what it seemed it was a week of endless nightmares, I'm strong enough to start planning. The shadow demon mentioned a champion of darkness, and considering what I had seen in my visions, that champion was the Night King attacking people beyond the wall to the north. If this demon really chose that thing as his champion, there is no doubt it won't be easy to defeat it now. This, of course, had something to do with my reincarnation. I doubt it's a coincidence, but the point is I won't win this like I thought I would. Who knows what a demon with that kind of power could give the Night King? Maybe enough powers to match me. But the Night King seemed pretty different, like a new person, so perhaps the champion of darkness was someone else. Who knows, but whoever it was, it would surely bring me troubles. But no matter what, I will prevail. I will overcome this and show that shadow thing that I will not bow down, no matter how utterly terrifying he might be. No matter what I decide to do, waiting around in this tent in the plains of Essos isn't getting me any closer to defeating my one true enemy, the still unknown champion of darkness. All I knew was that he had a connection to the White Walkers and that at one point he would be there to fight me, but either way, thinking about it's not going to fix the situation, so it's time to stretch my legs and venture forth. Being scared is not a reason to stop moving forward. Fear is something all humans must overcome, and right now is my turn to overcome this. Taking a deep breath, I decide to head over to War Tent where my wife was at the moment, discussing with the generals in my army about strategies and logistics. With a smile I take a seat across from her with a teasing smile, earning a faint smile from her as we both dismissed everyone in the room. Morning, my queen, I smiled. Seeing her taking charge was kinda sexy, so I decided to give her a kiss for being so diligent. How are you feeling, Ronard? Daenerys asked after a moment. She then reached across, putting her hand on my forehead. No fever at least. That's better. You really had me worried earlier, you know. I chuckled as I apologize. Last night she said that if I died, she would bring me back just to scold me to death, that I have to keep my promises, especially if they were made with a dragon. Daenerys smiled at that, as she sat on my lap. Good. I'm really glad. But if you start feeling sick, or feel pain, don't hesitate to come to me. I need you. We need you, she added, the last part touching her belly. I smiled at her. Thanks. Processing information, analyzing data. She's pregnant, are you certain? I inquired with disbelief. Not entirely, but I have been late for my blood for a week now. Daenerys smiled. It can be the stress, but it also can be that I'm with a child. A child, not surprising at all considering how much we share our bed. I didn't know exactly how to react. Was I supposed to be happy, sad, scared? In all honesty, all this made me feel was more determined to change this world for the best. No child of mine was going to inherit an earth full of crappy people and Resident Evil ripoffs. Maybe I was excited. If it is, then I'm more than happy. I smiled, touching her flat belly carefully. But if you aren't with a child, we can always keep trying for one. I sure enjoy the process. My smile at this point had turned mischievous. My pleasure, Daenerys purred in agreement, leaning into a passionate kiss. In the meantime, while we wait for confirmation, we can get to it, the doctor said is safe for most of the pregnancy. Oh. I chuckled. She had investigated to see if we could fuck during pregnancy. Dragons are not cold-blooded at all, at least mine isn't. You think pregnancy will stop me from mounting my bear? Huh? I'm a dragon, I mount the sky, nothing will stop me, Daenerys laughed. Besides, I need my handsome teddy bear. That's a compliment I can live with. Who am I, but a bear in the clutches of a dragon? All I can do is please you, I added, getting a handful or her ass with my hand. Let's go to our tent, my king, Daenerys smiled, eyes full of carnal lust. I take the next couple of days to rest and occasionally fuck with my wife. Every day I feel better, and my strength is slowly returning back to me. Not that I felt weak, but comparing to my peak performance state, I felt pretty battered. In the end, all I needed was 5 days of rest, and I was good to go, feeling awesome. After my recovery, I moved all my troops to start taking off the camp. After a couple of hours, we were ready to start moving forward once again. After all that happened here, I was standing outside what our camp was, ready to keep moving with my plans. It takes a couple of minutes so that my men can confirm they are ready to depart, and once again, we find ourselves on the road. After 8 hours of travel or so, I can see evidence that a bunch of horses we nearby, the grass looks like it was crushed. My Dothraki confirmed someone was here, though the wind was uncertain, we knew someone had crossed the path we were crossing. Deciding to see where this path would lead me, I continue to follow the trails. Maybe some Dothraki ran past here, or the Second Sons, maybe some merchant. Regardless of who, I was curious to find out. If they happened to be Dothraki, it would be a benefit for me. But I wasn't an idiot. While curiosity was driving me, I wasn't going to let that turn me into a brainless moron. The safest and logical path to ensure I didn't walk into my own grave was to send my ravens to scout for me. Caw, we won't disappoint you. Ravens in formation? Caw, with that raven squad flew into the horizon, to see what was ahead of us. These little critters really made my life a whole lot easier. Without them things would surely be a nightmare for me. With my ravens on the job, I decided to move slowly, making sure to not advance too much in case they came back with bad news, so as to avoid being forced into battle if I wasn't prepared. Be honest with me, can you talk to those ravens? Daenerys inquired with puzzlement in her purple eyes as she approached me. In a way, half-truths weren't lies, at least that's what I wanted to believe. The less she knew about my powers the safer she would be, but a part of me wanted to tell her, what did I have to lose? She was my wife, she should be the one person in the world to know everything about me, like I should about her. That's not cryptic at all, Daenerys deadpanned, and to be fair she was right. I didn't answer her question, I just went around it, like a fox dodging a bullet. I suppose, I owe a better answer, but later, I chuckled as I saw the ravens coming back doing some flashy formations as they descended. They had found whatever made these trails, and by the amount of time it took them, whatever it was close. Caw, go Raven Rangers, go Raven Rangers, caw, go Raven Rangers, caw. We are some mighty morphin Raven Rangers, all the ravens sang in unison as they descend, every second doing even more flashy poses. Fair enough, Daenerys chuckled as she herself saw the raven flying like bullets towards us, but at this point, nothing that isn't you telling me you can speak with them will suffice as an answer. I mean, look at them.